I, Lin Chen, was abandoned by my girlfriend of 8 years on my 30th birthday. I became a joke among my friends. 8 years have passed. Today, I was ready to propose to her, but what I got was her ruthless ridicule and the cruel sentence of breaking up. Lin Chen, a poor guy like you will never be worthy of me. I have waited for you for several years, but you still can't afford a mansion worth tens of millions to marry me. My girlfriend said this and walked away, leaving me standing there alone, heartbroken. I thought my life had hit rock bottom, and I wondered why I was such a failure. Why? Although I was born in a rural family and was a poor boy, I worked very hard after graduating from college. I was not willing to spend money on food or clothes. After saving $2 million, I bought a house in the suburbs to give her a warm home. Am I really such a failure? At this moment, a clear voice suddenly rang in my mind. Ding! The sign-in gift package system is activated successfully. I was stunned. System? What the hell? Yes, host. From today on, you can get a luxurious gift package by signing in every day. My eyes lit up instantly, as if I saw new hope. Sign in. Let me see what the first gift package is, I said impatiently. Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. You have obtained the permanent property rights of Zhenghai Jinyuan Commercial Street. I almost spit out the water from my mouth. Zhenghai Jinyuan Commercial Street is the top commercial area in the city. Owning this industry is equivalent to having endless wealth. At this moment, I felt that my fate had changed drastically. I was no longer the poor boy who was laughed at by others, but a new rich with huge assets. But this is just the beginning. I swear, I will make my ex-girlfriend regret abandoning me. On the second day, the sign-in gift package brought me a top-of-the-line supercar worth hundreds of millions of yuan. On the third day, I found that I had a perfect body. The sign-in gift package every day brought surprises and made a huge difference in my life. System, is there any field where I haven't made money? I asked with a smile, my eyes full of confidence and expectation. I knew that my life was about to usher in an unprecedented comeback. I drank a lot of beer last night, so the first thing I did when I got up today was to drain the toilet. Then, I started my daily check-in routine. System, check-in. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Gained 5 billion yuan in cash. When I heard the system's voice, I almost vomited out 5 billion yuan in cash. This wave of money was really scary. Although 5 billion in cash is not as valuable as those shares, it still has a big impact. I said to myself. In the past, the thing I lacked the most and the thing I lacked the least was money. If I sold all the shares and assets in my hands at once, I could at least cash out 20 to 30 billion. But I never planned to do that. Now, with 5 billion in cash in my bank account, my wallet is full again. I looked at the balance in my bank card and it was now 7 billion. Now, I'm finally not short of money. I muttered, started to wash up, then picked up the car keys and drove my Pagani away from home. Today, I am going to inspect Yuanlong Games Company. Yuanlong Games is located in the high-tech zone Science and Technology Park in the next district. If I drive other cars, I may not be able to catch up. After breakfast, I went to the commercial street and met up with my secretary Chen Zirua. Mr. Lin, what are you doing? Chen Zirua asked curiously. Accompany me to the science park, I said calmly. Chen Zirua nodded and said, okay, Mr. Lin. Arriving at the high-tech park, I stood in front of the Yuanlong Technology building with a calm expression. Yuanlong Technology is a top domestic game company. With just one game, Sword and Legend, it has been in the top 3 of the sales charts on foreign game platforms for nearly half a year. Even now, it ranks in the top 10, occupying a large market share, and its annual net profit is close to 10 billion. Chen Zirua looked at the huge office building and seemed a little confused. Boss, did you make an appointment with someone in Yuanlong Game? No, I plan to let you understand this company as soon as possible, from the main projects, personnel classification to financial status. I need you to master it as soon as possible and report to me. I shook my head. Chen Zirua asked hesitantly, but... Boss, will this Yuanlong game allow us to access these core materials? Don't worry, you are my secretary, they will let you check it. I said with a smile, because this Yuanlong game is my property. She didn't know I was the boss behind this company. Chen Zirua was shocked. She had been with me for so long, but she didn't know my true identity. It was no wonder. This news was too shocking. Even though she had experienced many surprising things, she couldn't help but tremble this time. We walked into the building, and after asking at the front desk, I waited in the lounge. The front desk contacted the president's office of Yuanlong Games, and Secretary Wang's face changed immediately when she received the call. Today, President Zhou specifically told her that if someone named Lin Chen came, she must entertain him well. The other party is the big boss of Yuanlong Games. Secretary Wang hurried over and greeted me with a nod and a bow. Director Lin, you are here. I am Wang Li, the secretary of General Manager Zhou. General Manager Zhou went to the city for a meeting today. I sent him a message and he will be back soon. Please follow me upstairs. I said calmly, it's okay. I just came to the company to take a look. This is my secretary Chen Zirua. I have instructed her to do some work before. She will complete it with you later. Secretary Wang nodded and said, okay, Mr. Lin, don't worry, I will complete the task. After entering the building, I asked for an access card, asked about the location of the game development department, and asked Secretary Wang to keep quiet and go to inspect alone. I wanted to see what kind of person the manager that Lu Qi complained about yesterday was. On an ordinary afternoon, I walked into the game development department and walked around casually. This department has 300 or 400 people, busy developing new games. However, as soon as I went deep into the department, I heard a fierce quarrel. Manager Jun. You should know this. If my new game project is truly completed, it will definitely occupy a large part of the international game market. Lian Xian, you've been a planner for so many years, you should know that gunfight games are already saturated. Although the battle royale genre you mentioned is indeed novel, who can guarantee its success? Your team just needs to continue updating Sword and Legend. As for the development of new games, I support Li Lai's team. Lian Xian shouted excitedly, Manager Zhen. Isn't it because I didn't give you a gift? Do you have to target us like this? We all know how much of the funding from above was embezzled by you. I narrowed my eyes slightly. It seems that the problems within the company are much more serious than I thought. So, I pushed open the door of the office without hesitation. It seems that there are some serious problems within this company. Who are you? Manager Zhen asked angrily. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that you, as a manager, accepted bribes and embezzled money privately. These things should be discussed properly. I picked up the project document on the table and glanced at it, narrowing my eyes. This project is really good, and it has the potential to become a hit game with just a few modifications. But Manager Zhen killed the project because of his selfish desires. Manager Zhen, this business plan can be considered a high-quality plan. Have you really read it carefully while sitting in this position? The company lets you sit here to create value, not to let you make money. Manager Zhen yelled, who allowed an intern like you to tell me what to do? Get out of here right now. Lian Xian yelled with red eyes, Zhen Yud. You relied on your brother-in-law being the vice president of the company to let you be the manager of the game development department. This really chilled everyone's heart. I sneered, do you really think you can cover the sky with one hand? Manager Zhen sneered, that's right. I can cover the sky with one hand. I tell you, you are fired. Heh, I smiled and answered a call from an unknown number. Hello. A respectful voice sounded on the other end of the phone, Mr. Lin, this is Zhou Nan. I'm going to see you right now. Mr. Lin, where are you now? I'm in the office of the manager of the game development department. How dare you, the manager, fire me? Manager Jin was stunned, and Zhou Nan almost fell down. He rushed over quickly, and when he saw the security guard was about to harm me, he shouted angrily, "Stop!" Manager Jin panicked, "Boss Joe, why are you here?" Joe Nan yelled, "Jinyud, you don't have to come to work from tomorrow. Get paid and get out." Jinyud protested loudly, "My brother-in-law is the vice president, aren't you afraid of offending my brother-in-law?" I said calmly, "In that case, let's just fire both of them." Jinyud roared, "Who do you think you are? Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you have Joe Nan as your backer." Joe Nan was furious and slapped Jinyud hard. "Do you know who this is? This is the chairman of our company." Jinyud and Lian Xian were stunned. I said coldly, "There are some guys in the company who are just sitting there doing nothing. We should clean them out." Jinyud embezzled and accepted bribes, misappropriated public funds, and almost forced a great contributor away, causing heavy losses. I want him to spend the rest of his life in prison. As for his brother-in-law, the vice president, check him too. Investigate him thoroughly. At this moment, Jinyud was completely desperate. He knew that he was finished, and even implicated his brother-in-law. For everything he had done, he would face serious legal consequences. When I stepped into the game development department, my hunch was confirmed. The problems within the company were more serious than I thought. Jinyud, the corrupt manager, had killed a game project that had the potential to become a hit because of personal grudges. I had to take action. The moment I walked into the office, I directly questioned Jinyud and exposed his corruption. At this time, Lian Xian and other employees were all shocked. They didn't expect that I was the legendary chairman. "Joe Nan, tell all employees to stop what they are doing. I have something to announce," I ordered coldly. Jinyud was thrown out by the security guards, and his brother-in-law was also kicked out. It all happened so fast that everyone watched it in amazement. I stood in front and saw that all the employees were nervous and uneasy. As the chairman who had never shown up, they were overwhelmed by my appearance. "Everyone relax, I'm not that particular." "Sit down," I said. Everyone sat down slowly, and the tense atmosphere eased slightly. I continued, "First, I don't like small moves in the company. Those who used to play by the rules are ignored, but now everyone has to follow the rules. Game companies value strength. If you have the ability to take this position, you can leave if you don't." Just a few simple words made everyone feel my determination and majesty. Second, the company will focus on developing a new battle royale game. I hope that all groups will actively cooperate with each other. Third, Lu Qi and Lian Xian. I shouted. Lu Qi and Lian Xian stood up, their eyes full of confusion and nervousness. Starting today, Lu Qi will be transferred to Lian Xian's team as deputy team leader. I hope you can cooperate well and devote all your efforts to developing new games, I announced. Lu Qi responded excitedly, "Yes." Looking at everyone's expressions, I knew that my decision gave them new hope for the company, but also gave them pressure. After the meeting, I walked out of the development department and met Chen Ziruo. "Mr. Lin, the information you asked me to organize has been completed," Chen Ziruo reported. "Oh? Then tell me about it briefly." I was a little surprised by her efficiency. Chen Ziruo explained the situation in detail. After listening, I nodded and said, "Not bad." She continued, "Also, Mr. Lin, many big business owners in Zhanghai City have sent you visiting cards, and Mr. Zhang from Manhwa department store has invited you to attend the charity auction tonight." I knew the importance of this charity gala, so I asked Chen Ziruo to agree to it for me. She nodded and left, and I went into the chairman's office to handle some matters. At noon, I happened to run into Lu Qi, who was very excited to see me. "Shenzi, you are so awesome. You are the boss of the company?" "You never told me," he said in surprise. I smiled and said, I was afraid I would scare you. But after hearing what you said last time, I decided to come and take a look." "Are you used to it after being transferred there?" I asked. "It's okay, but there's a lot to learn in the new group." He smiled. We chatted for a while and then went about our business. At 7:30 p.m., I drove my Pagani function to a hotel by the Pujang River. The parking lot was full of luxury cars. After all, this charity gala attracted half of the celebrities in Shanghai. As soon as my car entered the venue, it immediately attracted a lot of attention. Chen Zirua and I got out of the car and walked into the hotel, and immediately felt the attention of everyone. However, most people didn't know me and thought I was just a young master. Zhang Ming quickly came over. "Mr. Lin, you're here." "Hey, Mr. Zhang." I responded easily. "Ha, young Master Lin, it's really an honor to have you here to support us. But I didn't expect that you are actually the chairman of Yuanlong Games." I interrupted him. "Don't mention this now. I don't want to be exposed. After all, as the chairman of Yuanlong Games, I would be surrounded by people fawning on me after my identity was exposed, which was simply torture for me. I still prefer to be quiet." Zhang Ming was startled for a moment, then nodded and smiled. "Okay, then, Mr. Lin, please feel free to do as you please, we'll talk after the banquet." I nodded and smiled, picked up a glass of juice, and stood aside to drink quietly. At this moment, I noticed a young man in a black suit not far away, looking at Chen Zirua with hot eyes, and then looking at me coldly. "A flower stuck in cow dung," he whispered, with a gleam in his eyes, and walked towards us with a skinny young man. "Miss, my name is Shen Lian. Would you be so kind as to have a drink with me?" He held the wine glass in his hand and stared at Chen Zirua with undisguised eyes. Chen Zirua looked uncomfortable and said with disgust, "Sorry, I just drank and I don't want a drink now." I responded coldly, "I have a bad temper, you'd better get out of here right now." Shen Lian's face turned pale instantly, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Okay. Boy, I'll remember you." After that, he turned and left. The skinny young man glared at me fiercely and followed him. After the auction started, Chen Zirua and I found a seat and sat down. Chen Zirua quietly introduced me to several entrepreneurs present, all of whom had sent me visiting cards before. I nodded and decided to find time to meet them after the auction. The auction went smoothly, with lots being sold one after another. Soon, the finale, ink bamboo painting, was on the market. The auctioneer announced a reserve price of 30 million, and each bid must not be less than 5 million. The price started to rise, and it quickly climbed to 70 million. Chen Zirua exclaimed, "The price is rising so fast." At this time, Shen Lian raised his hand, 80 million. When everyone saw that it was Shen Lian, they all fell silent. Shen Lian was clearly determined to win, confident that the painting belonged to him. However, I slowly raised my hand and said calmly, 90 million. When the people around me heard the price I quoted, they were stunned. Everyone's eyes turned to me, and there were discussions. "It's this guy again. Oh my God, who is he?" Shen Lian's face turned livid, and he stared at me coldly. "Boy, are you ready to challenge me?" I smiled calmly. "Challenging you? Are you worthy?" This ink bamboo by Zhang Banqiao is a rare treasure. My father has always liked calligraphy and painting, but our family was poor before and couldn't afford these things. Now that I have money, I came across this treasure, so of course I have to take a picture of it. Shen Lian gritted his teeth and continued to hold up the sign, 95 million. I sneered, "Just 5 million? TSK, if you don't have money, go home and ask for more." Then I raised my hand, 110 million. Shen Lian was so angry that he was shaking, but he continued to bid, 120 million. I didn't hesitate, 200 million. The whole audience was in an uproar, and everyone gasped. Shen Lian's face turned pale. He knew this was his limit, and he gritted his teeth and shouted, 300 million. I responded calmly, 350 million. Shen Lian was completely stunned, and everyone around him was also stunned. Who on earth was this person who could actually bid 350 million to buy this ink bamboo painting? Shen Lian pointed at me and shouted, "Impossible. He absolutely cannot afford this price. I demand that he prove his assets." He became more and more excited, as if he was convinced that I was driving up the price. At this moment, Zhang Ming finally couldn't bear it anymore and shouted angrily, "Enough!" Shen Lian was stunned and looked at Zhang Ming blankly. "Brother Zhang, what's wrong?" Zhang Ming was furious. "Do you know who this is?" "He is Lin Chen, the legendary Mr. Lin." There was an uproar all around. "What? He is actually Mr. Lin? Oh my god, it's him." It turns out to be Mr. Lin. Xin Lian has hit a wall this time. Someone asked in confusion, "Who is this Mr. Lin? Why are people so surprised?" The people next to him looked at him strangely, and then explained, "This Mr. Lin has a very complicated background. He is not only the boss of Jin Yuan Commercial Street, but also the big boss behind Yuanlong Games. He holds 7.8% of the shares of Penguin Group and is the 7th largest natural person shareholder of Penguin Group." After hearing this, everyone gasped and looked at me with awe and shock. Xin Lian's face turned pale, and his eyes were full of fear. He finally realized that he had offended someone he shouldn't have offended. "Mr. Lin, the ink bamboo painting you just bought is really a great thing. Although the price is a bit high, I think this painting will appreciate in value soon, and you will definitely be able to double your money when you sell it again," Chen Zirua said to me in the car. I smiled and said, "I don't plan to sell this painting. I bought it mainly for my father to play with." Chen Zirua was stunned. He bought a painting worth 350 million just for his father to play with? She nodded and said, "Boss Lin, you are really filial." I smiled faintly. After all, the Mid-Autumn Festival is coming soon. I will give this painting to my father as a Mid-Autumn Festival gift. At the same time, I can also take this opportunity to confess my current situation to him. Anyway, I can't hide it now even if I want to. After sending Chen Zirua home, I drove back to my own home. I fell asleep immediately and didn't talk all night. The next morning, I got up and did my daily check-in. "Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. You have obtained 100% equity of Pinarello Bicycle Company." Bicycle company? I was stunned. I had never heard of this company. How powerful could a bicycle company be? I was full of doubts and subconsciously looked up the company. When I saw the profile of this company, I was completely shocked. Pinarello is a world-class bicycle brand, famous for its exquisite craftsmanship and innovative design. Especially in professional bicycle competitions, its products have always been the first choice of champion riders. I didn't expect that it was such a company with a world-class reputation. At this moment, I realized how amazing the reward for this sign-in was. Owning this company means that I not only own a top global brand, but also can add a heavyweight puzzle to my future business landscape. The next morning, I got up and started my daily check-in. System, I want to sign in. Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. You have obtained McLaren P1. I was stunned when I heard about this reward. Another top-of-the-line supercar? Just as I was surprised, my cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello. Hello, Lin Chen, this is Cui Hao." A familiar voice came from the other end of the phone. "Counselor." I was a little surprised. "You changed your phone number without telling me in advance. I got your number from Yu Shangnan. Today's seminar starts at 9:30 a.m. Are you ready?" "Don't worry, counselor, I will be there on time." After hanging up the phone, I checked the time. It was already 8:05, and I still had an hour to drive to the university. I quickly ran to the underground parking lot. As soon as I arrived at the parking lot, I was stunned. A fat woman was standing in front of my McLaren P1, and her little teddy was peeing on the tire. "Oh, son, you peed." The woman didn't care at all. My anger instantly flared up. "You know, this is a McLaren P1 worth tens of millions." I walked over with a cold face and asked, "Did you notice where your dog peed?" The fat woman glanced at me and said disdainfully, "Isn't this just peeing on the ground? Besides, my son is not a dog, don't talk nonsense." I took a deep breath and said coldly, "Your dog peed on the wheels of my McLaren." The fat woman's face suddenly changed, and she said coquettishly, "How can you say without any evidence that it was my son who peed? My son has been strictly trained and will not urinate in the car casually." I sneered, "Okay, you don't admit it, right? Then I'll send the car for inspection. If it's really corroded, you have to pay for it. I spent 30 million on this car, and the tires have corroded, so you have to pay at least 1 million. What? The woman turned pale with fear. She was just an employee and could not afford to pay 1 million. At this time, a gangster came out of the elevator. The fat woman's eyes lit up and she shouted, "Honey! Someone is slandering me." What? I have such a bad temper. "I want to see who dares to slander my wife," the gangster shouted arrogantly. I turned around and saw that it was the gangster from yesterday. My face turned strange. This guy crashed my nearly 3 million bicycle yesterday, and he came again today? When the gangster saw me, his face turned pale and he fell to the ground. "Is it you?" I sneered, "Oh, what a coincidence, this is your man." TSK, it's true that birds of a feather flock together. The gangster was trembling all over, his face full of fear. He stared at me and spoke cautiously, Mr. Lin, I wonder how this bitch offended you?" As soon as these words came out, the fat woman exploded. She grabbed the gangster fiercely and angrily cursed, "Chowda! Tell me clearly, who is the bitch? Aren't you usually very powerful? Why are you so cowardly in front of this guy? How dare you call me a bitch?" The gangster was very annoyed and slapped him. "You bitch, shut up." The fat woman was stunned and dared not speak. The gangster continued to bow to me. He was really scared. After returning home yesterday, his friend told him that I was the ruthless man who defeated the black belt of Taekwondo in the martial arts hall with one move, and I was also closely related to Zhang Ming. "Hey, look at what this dog has done, peeing on my wheel." What? The gangster was completely devastated. He recognized the car, it was a McLaren P1 worth tens of millions, and the dog dared to pee on the wheel? He turned around, grabbed the golden teddy dog, and threw it out angrily. "My son," the fat woman screamed, her eyes full of despair. The teddy dog hit the wall, whimpered twice, and died. I watched coldly, without a trace of sympathy. "I told you not to buy the dog, but you didn't listen," the gangster yelled. "Hurry up and apologize to Mr. Lin and beg for his forgiveness. If you don't do well, I'll teach you a lesson when I get back." The fat woman finally realized that she couldn't afford to offend this insignificant guy. She crawled to the side of my car, wiped the wheel with her sleeve, and kept apologizing. I'm sorry, it's my fault." I looked at him coldly. "You are a dog who relies on the power of others. You only know how to apologize now? Get lost." Yes. The fat woman stood up and ran away with the big brother. I looked indifferent, got into the car, washed it briefly, and headed straight to school. Along the way, passers-by cast astonished glances at my car. When I arrived at the school, I parked my car in the parking lot in front of the auditorium. The students stared at me as I got out of the car, and I was secretly proud of myself, wondering when I could be so proud of myself in school. There were still 10 minutes before the symposium started, and the students, led by the counselors, entered the auditorium one after another. Just as I was about to enter, I was stopped by the security guard at the door. An unexpected event at the forum. "Excuse me, classmate, please show me your student ID." The security guard stopped me. I was slightly startled, then shook my head and said, "Sorry, I don't have a student ID." "No student ID? Then why did you come in?" The security guard's face immediately turned cold, and people around me started pointing at me. "Do you really think you can drive a luxury car and barge into our school?" "That's right, our University of Finance and Economics is a famous school, not just anyone can get in." I felt a little embarrassed when I heard these comments, but I still explained, "I am here to attend the symposium." "Where is your invitation letter?" the security guard continued to ask. I scratched my head in embarrassment. After all, it was true that there was no invitation. Just when I was about to call Lao Chui, he showed up. Lin Chen, why haven't you gone in yet? It's about to start. Lao Chui said hurriedly when he saw me. I want to go in too, but you didn't give me an invitation. I smiled bitterly, helplessly. Lao Chui was stunned for a moment, then said with embarrassment, "Sorry, I had too many things to do yesterday and forgot." We walked into the auditorium with awkward expressions. Lao Chui explained in a low voice, "Today's symposium is actually to hope that you will donate money to support college students' entrepreneurship. People who donate more will also have a certain say in the support projects." I nodded, realizing that this seminar was actually a form of angel investment. After I took my seat, I looked around. There were more than a dozen guests sitting in the first 3 rows of the auditorium, and I was arranged to sit at the back. People around me looked at me from time to time, as if they were full of curiosity about my identity. A little fat guy came over and introduced himself with a smile. "Friend, I'm Wang Lo, what's your name?" "Lin Chen." Wang Lu was stunned for a moment, as if he was somewhat familiar with my name but couldn't remember it. He then asked, "What does your family do?" "Me? My family doesn't have much property, and I just live a life of idleness and waiting for death." I answered indifferently, secretly laughing at the fact that I had let others take care of all my property, and I really had a lot of free time. After listening to this, Wang Lu showed a somewhat disdainful expression, but I didn't care. The symposium began, and after the school leaders spoke a lot of nonsense, they announced the start of investment. The first person to come on stage was a senior executive, who simply said a few words and invested 500,000 yuan. Then, several corporate representatives also invested, and soon it was the turn of the real boss, who invested 30 million yuan at once. As the donations gradually cooled down, the school leaders looked a little embarrassed. A group of second-generation people led by Wan Lu uniformly donated 1 million yuan each. This behavior caused whispers and embarrassed the school leaders. Watching all this, I smiled inwardly. This forum was far more interesting than I had imagined. It was my turn. I straightened my clothes and walked onto the stage. When the school leaders saw me on stage, their expressions became even uglier. Another rich second generation. I walked to the microphone and said, "Well, let me say a few words here first." The commotion was even worse, and the faces of the school leaders were as dark as they could be. After all, it was the privilege of the big guys to say a few words before making donations. The amount I donate next must be used to support college students' entrepreneurship, and I will find an organization to supervise it, so some people who want to profit from it, forget it. I paused and continued, "I will take out 500 million yuan every year as a fund to support entrepreneurship." Instantly, the auditorium fell into silence, and you could hear a pin drop. Then, the scene exploded. 500 million. Every year. The entire auditorium was shocked and everyone was talking about it. The school leaders and the second generation rich were all stunned, and Lao Chui was also dumbfounded. He never thought that I would donate so much. The host trembled and asked, "Sir, is what you said true?" "Of course." I smiled. "I will find someone to sign the investment agreement and supervise the use of the funds." Below, a business tycoon stood up and led the applause. "May I know what this young man's name is?" "I am the chairman of Jinquan Electronics, Shui Haiyang." I nodded. "Lin Chen." "You are Lin Chen? The chairman of Yuanlong Games, Mr. Lin Chen?" Shui Haiyang exclaimed. At this moment, everyone was shocked. "What? He is the chairman of Yuanlong Games? Fuck, this is the chairman of Yuanlong Games, the national pride of the gaming industry? He is really a young and promising man." All of a sudden, everyone exclaimed, looking at me with shock and disbelief in their eyes. I smiled. "Yes, it's me." Everyone gasped. Yuanlong Games, a company with a market value of 10 billion, has such a young chairman. The business tycoons and the second generation of rich people looked terrified and frightened. They knew my other identities. "I didn't expect to meet you, Mr. Lin, here." Shui Haiyang said with a smile. Wang Luo, who was at the back, had a buzzing in his mind. His family's business was also about games, but they were just some web games that cost money. Wang Luo finally remembered that his father had told him a few days ago that if he met me, he must be polite. But he didn't expect to meet me here today, and he almost missed the opportunity to get to know me. I started sharing my entrepreneurial experience. Although many big names have shared a lot of valuable information, I still decided to say a few words. Well, I really don't know how to share entrepreneurial experience. I smiled and looked at the people in the audience. But you must have heard a lot of valuable information from the sharing of the big guys before, so I will just chat for a while. You can just listen to what I say next. It's boring if you take it seriously. After all, how bumpy the road to entrepreneurship is, how many people fail, this can't be explained in just a few words. Those who really succeed in entrepreneurship must be a small group of people who work the hardest, and are the luckiest. So I still hope you believe that hard work and sweat are the things that will never betray you. At this point, everyone nodded in agreement. However, what I said next surprised them. But do you know one thing? For real success, luck is more important than anything else. Take me for example. I am just lying down and waiting for money to fall. The company is directly thrown to the secretary and the president. Do you know how boring I am on weekdays? How lazy I am. So when I look at you guys, I am really relieved and happy. You can still work hard, unlike me, who can only eat, drink and have fun every day, looking at the countless money, and is extremely bored. People in the audience? School leaders? They finally understood what I meant by just listen. Is this human language? If you don't want this money, give it to us. We also want to experience this extremely boring life. Then, I changed the subject, but I still encourage you to start a business or do something. You are still young and don't have much money. If you fail, it will only hurt for a while. Through hard work, you can see this society clearly and get more survival rules. Maybe some of you can be as lucky as me and succeed? After I finished speaking, I turned and left. The people below fell into silence and contemplation. Although there was a hint of bragging in my words, the last part was full of deep meaning. Soon, they understood what I meant. Young people should strive hard, and failure does not matter. As long as you work hard, there is hope. And I can enjoy myself because I have struggled before. For a moment, everyone lowered their heads in shame. Lin Chen was sincerely teaching them some life lessons, but they thought they were on the second level and Lin Chen was on the first level. In fact, Lin Chen was already on the fifth level. If I knew what they were thinking, I would probably rant about it. What the hell, is this what I mean? I walked out of the conference room where the symposium was held, and everyone started discussing the details of the donation. After the discussion, I had dinner with several high-ranking university officials and business tycoons. The second-generation rich wanted to get in, but they couldn't. The circle of business tycoons and the circle of the second-generation rich are not at the same level. Unless they have created an industry themselves, they are just the second generation. After exchanging WeChat IDs, I left and returned home, thinking about what I had agreed with the University of Finance and Economics. I decided to start discussing the details and signing the agreement the day after tomorrow. Sitting on the sofa, I turned on my phone, found Chen Ziruo's phone number, and called him. Mr. Lin, you're looking for me. Chen Ziruo's voice came from the other end of the phone. Well, I need you to help me acquire the top law firm in Shanghai. How long will it take? Chen Ziruo was silent for a while, then said, if we want to acquire 100% of the shares, it will take about 3 days. If we just want to have absolute control, 51% of the shares, it can be done by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. Okay, go ahead and do it. Just transfer the money you need and let me know when the purchase is complete. After hanging up the phone, I continued playing games, thinking that I would go back to my hometown after I finished dealing with these things. The day after tomorrow is Mid-Autumn Festival, and I have to prepare well. At 7:30 in the evening, I pushed my bike out for a ride and returned home at 8:30. After taking a shower, I drank a cup of warm milk, did 20 minutes of stretching exercises, and went to bed. After a good night's sleep, I woke up in the morning and started signing in. System, sign in. Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. You have obtained 80% equity interest in Gulfstream Aerospace Corporation. I was stunned when I heard this. Gulfstream Aerospace? This is the world's top luxury business jet manufacturer. How did it end up in my hands? At this moment, my cell phone rang and a text message came in. Dear Mr. Lin Chen, your private jet Gulfstream V has arrived at the private aircraft storage bay of Shanghai Hangzhou Airport. Looking at this message, I was a little confused. Gulfstream V, one of the best performing private jets in the world, is priced at $59 million, or about 413 million renminbi. These foreigners really know how to play. Shaking my head helplessly, I felt that I had to spend money again. After all, I had a private jet, but I needed to hire flight attendants and pilots, and I had to pay extra maintenance costs. Just as I was thinking about it, the phone rang again. It was Chen Ziruo. Boss Lin, I've already secured the acquisition of the law firm you asked me to acquire. Oh? Which law firm? Quanzheng Law Firm. You invested 130 million and hold 53% of the shares of Quanzheng Law Firm, which means you have absolute control. Quanzheng Law Firm is a nationally renowned law firm with a 95% winning rate. Hearing this, I nodded with satisfaction. Okay, well done. Please notify a few lawyers and ask them to come over. Okay, Mr. Lin. After hanging up the phone, I continued, also, please prepare 2 pilots and crew for private jets for me. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a while before Chen Ziruo spoke up. Boss Lin, are you talking about the pilot of the private plane? Yes, the Gulfstream V. The other end of the phone was silent again for a while, and I continued, by the way, please help me report the flight route. I will be returning to my hometown Heian from Shanghai Hangzhou Airport the day after tomorrow. Okay, Mr. Lin. After hanging up the phone, I thought about not having a car when I returned, so I decided to rent a transport plane to transport my car back. Chen Ziruo was almost frightened by my request, but still agreed. Then, I found something to eat and sat on the sofa to continue playing games. At the same time, in the Quanzheng law firm, Fonin hung up the phone and pushed open Robin's office door. Robin, the new boss's secretary, called and asked us to go meet the new boss. Robin opened his eyes sparkled. Oh? Then let's go over and see who this new boss is. He developed a keen interest in the new boss who was able to acquire the Warrant law firm overnight. Robin and I left the company and headed straight to Jingxiu Yiting. After getting Lin Chen's consent, we were let in. Lin Chen tidied his clothes and sat on the sofa waiting for our arrival. Soon, there was a knock on the door. I went to open the door, feeling a little nervous. After all, we didn't know what kind of person Lin Chen was. But the moment I saw Lin Chen, I was shocked beyond words. Young, really too young. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed that a person who could quickly acquire our Quanzheng law firm would be such a young guy. We looked at each other and saw the same shock in each other's eyes. We originally thought that the person who could acquire the Warrant law firm so quickly should be a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s with some skills and experience. However, Lin Chen in front of us was only in his early 20s. After Lin Chen motioned for us to enter the house, he sat casually on the sofa, while we sat nervously on the sofa on the other side, with our fingers crossed and our arms on our legs. Don't be too nervous. I asked you here just to help. Lin Chen said casually. Mr. Lin, if you have anything to say, please feel free to tell me. I answered a little stiffly. It's like this. A few days ago, I decided to set aside a sum of money every year to support the entrepreneurship support program of my alma mater, Shanghai University of Finance and Economics. I hope to have a clear understanding of the specific whereabouts of this money and the income generated. Lin Chen went straight to the point. Robin asked professionally, Mr. Lin, I wonder how much the money is and how it was paid? About 500 million per year. Lin Chen replied calmly. Robin and I were shocked. We thought it was tens of millions of dollars, but we didn't expect it to be 500 million and 500 million per year. This is simply too scary. Okay, Mr. Lin, then we need to continue discussing with you some specific issues regarding your business plan. Robin said. We started discussing the details, and after more than 10 minutes, we finalized a plan. Lin Chen nodded with satisfaction and was very happy with our professional performance. How about this? I also have shares in other companies and I'm just short of a legal advisor, so I'll hand them over to you. Lin Chen suddenly said. Robin and I looked at each other and smiled bitterly. This new boss is really not an ordinary person. He asked for shares of several companies right away. I wonder which companies you, Mr. Lin, own shares in. We need to be prepared, I asked. Lin Chen thought for a moment, then began to list 100% equity of Jinyuan Commercial Street. Robin and I were shocked. Jinyuan Commercial Street, the top office building in Zhonghai, actually belonged to our boss. 7.8% stake in Penguin Group. My hands trembled slightly. Penguin Group, the world's top super group. 70% equity of Yuanlong Games. The muscles on Robin's face twitched. Although this company was new, it was already a top gaming company in the country, and Lin Chen actually owned 70% of the shares. 100% of the shares of the bicycle company Pinarello. Robin couldn't sit still anymore. This was another world-class bicycle brand company. 80% equity interest in Gulfstream Aerospace Corporation. At this moment, my mind was buzzing. Gulfstream Aerospace, one of the top 3 aircraft manufacturing companies in the world, was actually under Lin Chen's control. Robin and I looked at each other. This was the umpteenth time today that we were shocked. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Lin Chen asked puzzledly. It's okay, please continue. I took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in my heart. And then there are you, the 53% stake in the Warrant Law Firm. Robin and I looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Suddenly, I felt that my own firm was the least valuable among all the companies owned by Lin Chen. This new boss was really an unbelievable existence. While eating breakfast, I started today's sign-in. Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. Congratulations to the host for winning, Patek Philippe Platinum 5002p watch. As the system voice fell, a watch appeared in front of me. Another watch? I said to myself helplessly, picking up the watch on the table and playing with it. Compared with the previous Richard Miller, this watch has a more traditional appearance and is more comfortable to look at. However, the time on it is too complicated. I shook my head and turned on my phone to check the price of the watch. Soon, a message popped up, Patek Philippe Platinum 5002p, priced at 17.6 million. Fuck, a watch that can't even tell time is so expensive. I twitched my mouth helplessly. I picked up the key of Pagani Huayra and headed straight to Keita. Soon, my car stopped at the school parking lot. I got out of the car wearing a mask to prevent being recognized. After taking a look at the address sent by phone, I walked towards the administration building. In front of the administration building, 2 student union members were blocking the way, and many students were standing outside. These students were either wearing suits or casual clothes, but they were all holding a pile of thick A4 papers, waiting for something. Seeing this, I suddenly felt a headache. These people were undoubtedly waiting for me. Fuck, are these guys crazy? They have to let the news out. I gritted my teeth and sighed helplessly. Do these people really think I will invest in them? Besides, I don't have that much money. I shook my head and headed straight for the administration building. However, as soon as I reached the door, I was stopped by the student union. My classmate, today is the day that Senior Lin signs the contract with the school. Just submit your investment to the school for review. Senior Lin does not have time to meet with you one by one, said a member of the student union to me. I was stunned and just wanted to say something when a student union cadre came out and shouted coldly, "I'll give you 10 minutes, and you all go away." If Senior Lin comes and sees this, it will be disgraceful. After he finished speaking, he looked at me and sneered, and you, look at yourself. Even if you come to talk to Senior Lin about investment, you should at least prepare a plan, right? You don't even have a plan, and you're dressed so casually, and you dare to come here to talk about investment? It's ridiculous. My face darkened, I took a deep breath, looked at the student union president, turned around and left, and started making a phone call. The students around me burst into laughter. On the other side, in the conference room, Feng Yin's face changed immediately after receiving my call. He looked at the vice president with a serious expression. Mr. Feng, has Mr. Lin arrived? The vice principal was puzzled. Mr. Lin has arrived, but was stopped by your student union. Feng Yin said coldly. What? The vice principal's face changed drastically, and he looked at the seal with astonishment. After the contract was signed, I chatted with the school leaders for a few minutes and left. Under their escort, I got in the car and drove to my own commercial street. In the commercial street, I first picked out a gold bracelet and a gold necklace for my mother. Old people prefer these value-preserving things. Then, I moved 2 boxes of Feitian Mutai and 2 boxes of Huandalu 1916. Anyway, the entire Jinyuan commercial street belongs to me. If the boss here dares to sell fake cigarettes and fake alcohol, I don't mind letting him stay for 10 days or half a month. After returning home, I packed some clothes, had dinner, played a few games, and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up early and started signing in. System, sign in. Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. You have obtained Night 15. I was stunned. The Night 15 is an off-road vehicle that costs 15 million yuan. It is limited to 100 units, each of which takes about 4,000 hours to build by hand. It is fully armored and bulletproof. It is simply a mobile armored vehicle. Isn't this too much? I took a deep breath, my heart filled with excitement. I rubbed my hands, picked up the car keys of Night 15, and ran straight to the underground garage. As soon as I entered the underground garage, I saw the steel behemoth, the Night 15. It was pure black, heavy and fierce, 6.1 meters long, 2.5 meters wide and 2.5 meters high, with a square shape and almost all the lines of the body were diamond lines. This is Night 15. I touched the car body gently, and a few ripples appeared in my heart. Then, I opened the trunk and moved the gifts I brought for my parents into it. After doing all this, I officially got in the car. The interior decoration of the Night 15 was even more luxurious than that of the Volkswagen MPV. The car was covered with Wilton wool carpets and equipped with a series of equipment such as an in-car audio and video control system, night vision goggles, game consoles, and LCD screens. This is too luxurious. I sighed, and called Lu Qi to tell him that I was going to pick him up. Then I started the car and drove straight to where Lu Qi was. At this time, Lu Qi was ready, and he and Yuan Kir were waiting for me on the roadside. They kept staring at the intersection, expecting my Rolls-Royce to appear. In the end, they didn't expect that a more stylish and cooler Night 15 would quietly stop beside them. I honked the horn, which startled them. When they turned around, they found that I was waiting for them in the car. Lu Qi was stunned. Fuck, I haven't seen you for just a few days, and you changed your car again? Nothing, get in the car. I smiled and watched them get in the car. After getting in the car, they were shocked by the luxurious decoration and top-notch accessories inside the car. Oh my god, brother, your car. Top Night 15. I replied calmly. Lu Qi and Yuan Kur gasped, touched the armrests of the car, and their eyes were full of shock. You, drive this car back? Lu Qi asked, swallowing. I smiled and said, you'll know in a moment. After that, I drove straight to the airport. My 2 companions and I drove quickly towards the airport highway. Lu Qi asked in confusion, Brother Lin, are you going to the airport? But we haven't bought the tickets yet. He thought I was just driving back, but he didn't expect me to go straight to the airport. Don't worry, it's okay if you don't have a plane ticket. I smiled and comforted them. Although the 2 were confused, they could only rest quietly and trust me. Soon, I left the highway, slowed down and drove around, and finally drove into the private hangar behind the airport. Lucci was even more confused. "Brother Lin, the entrance is in front, why did you bring us here?" My car stopped in front of the small airport, and a young security guard immediately ran over. "Hello, may I ask who you are?" "Lin Chen," I said lightly. The security guard's face suddenly changed, and he quickly opened the door and said respectfully, "Mr. Lin, your private plane and transport plane are ready." Lucci and Yuan Kor were stunned. Private plane? They looked at each other, and the doubts in their hearts were immediately solved. It turned out that I was not going to take an ordinary flight, but a private plane. Outside the private hangar, my crew was ready to go. Captain Zhang Qiaoxing was giving a speech. "Everyone, cheer up. This time, the guest is a big money sponsor. He owns a private jet at the age of just over 20, and he even rented a transport plane to bring his car home. You must go all out." The flight attendant and the co-pilot responded solemnly, "Yes." When my car arrived, Zhang Qiaoxing immediately came forward and said, "Mr. Lin, your plane is ready." I nodded, "Let's go." I got out of the car with the confused Lucci and Yuan Kor, and continued, "Help me get the car onto the transport plane." Zhang Qiaoxing instructed the co-pilot, "Move Mr. Lin's car onto the transport plane." Then he led us into the hangar. "Shinzi, did you really buy a private jet? What does it look like?" Lucci asked excitedly. "You'll know in a moment." I smiled mysteriously. We arrived in front of a Gulfstream V, and Lucci's eyes suddenly widened. "Mr. Lin, this is your private jet, Gulfstream V," Zhang Qiaoxing introduced. Hearing this, Lucci and Yuan Kor were completely shocked. A private jet. Although they knew I was rich, they didn't expect that I could afford this top luxury jet worth hundreds of millions. This level of luxury was really unbelievable. "Mr. Lin, the captain asked me to tell you that the plane will take off in 10 minutes, and the total flight time is about 2.5 hours. I nodded, and then everyone turned their phones to flight mode. After getting off the plane, I continued driving towards my hometown. My hometown is not in Heian City. 30 minutes later, a Mercedes-Benz G worth 1 million yuan stopped at the door. At home, my father sat there, his face a little dark. Opposite, my father's old friend Yi Chanyu was holding a purple clay teapot, constantly boasting. After returning home, I told my parents that I was just lucky enough to get some money, so they didn't know that I became a billionaire by getting wealth through the sign-in system. The next day, I went to a class reunion. My family used to be very poor, and I was always the poorest student in the class. I was inevitably laughed at by my classmates when I attended the party today, but I still kept a low profile until I was having dinner at the hotel. "Brother Lin? Is there anyone here who is Brother Lin?" The waiter's call made the entire box quiet, and everyone looked at me in confusion. Then, a man in a high-end suit walked up to me and said with a big smile, "Brother Lin, why didn't you tell me in advance when you came to eat at my restaurant? So that I could prepare it in advance, right? Take a look at what you are eating. If you had told me earlier, I could have asked the kitchen to prepare some good dishes. Also, there is no good wine here, so I can only make do with this 10,000 yuan bottle of Lafite 2011. As soon as the words fell, the whole place fell silent. Everyone's eyes widened, their faces full of disbelief. This bottle of wine, this meal, are all my credit? There was an eerie silence in the air. Fake. This is absolutely fake. You must be Lin Chen's agent. Chao Liang muttered to himself, refusing to believe it. However, at this moment, the door of the room was pushed open again. Su Jia walked up to me, nodded and said, "Director Lin, I'm late. In addition, Shama asked me to say hello to you on his behalf. He originally planned to fly back and visit you in person, but suddenly he had something to deal with in the United States." "It's okay. Please tell Brother Xiaoma for me that I will fly to Xinchuan when he comes back," I responded calmly. This simple conversation made everyone fall into silence again. Brother Xiaoma came to visit in person? What was Lin Chen's identity? Everyone was filled with confusion and shock. Lucci cleared his throat and said, "Actually, Brother Lin has been telling me not to say it, but now it doesn't make any difference whether I want to say it or not." Before, Chao Liang, didn't you say that as long as you get the order from Yuanlong Games, you can get a commission of 100,000 yuan? Everyone looked at me with curiosity on their faces. Could it be that I have some hidden identity? Chao Liang, with a dazed look on his face, also looked over. Actually, what I want to say is that whether your order can be successful depends on Lin Chen's mood. After all, the boss behind Yuanlong Game is actually Chen Zi. The whole place was silent. The girl's eyes sparkled. Oh my god. Lin Chen was actually the boss of Yuanlong Games? Doesn't that mean he's a billionaire? Chao Liang couldn't believe his ears at all. Impossible, it's fake, it must be fake. Everyone exclaimed, "Oh my god, it turns out that Lin Chen is the real boss." Today really opened my eyes. Lin Chen, you are so secretive that I can't even recognize your talent. I still smiled brightly, peacefully, and calmly. My dear classmates, don't be polite to me tonight, drink as much as you want. Brother Lin, you are so generous. The classmates praised in unison. Those classmates who had just laughed at me now looked pale as death, and they wished they could find a hole in the ground to crawl into. The next day, my second uncle came home. When he heard the noise outside the door, he turned pale and curled up, looking very scared. "Here it comes." Second uncle's voice trembled. I patted my second uncle's shoulder and comforted him softly. "Don't worry, they are just some little thugs. I will deal with them." After that, I walked to the door and opened it. "What are you making so much noise for? Do you have any manners?" I shouted. Outside the door, a young man with a face full of flesh stood there, looking at me arrogantly. Next to him stood a woman, and as soon as I saw her, I recognized her as the BMW woman who hit my car before. The BMW woman pointed at me and shouted to the young man, "Honey. That's him. That's the guy who hit my car." The young man sneered, "I originally planned to deal with this old man first, and then look for you, but I didn't expect to meet you so soon. Boy, you hit my wife's car, it seems that you don't know how powerful I, Zhao Lin, am." I asked coldly, "So what do you want?" Zhao Lin said arrogantly, "You crashed my car, and it can't be solved without 1 million. In addition, this contract must be signed by this old man. Otherwise..." "Ha, don't blame me for being rude." I sneered, "Your junky car is worth at most 500,000 yuan, and you want 1 million yuan? And my second uncle's house is worth at least 1 million yuan, and you want to take it away for 200,000 or 300,000 yuan? I don't know who gave you the guts." My father also became angry and stood up and said, "Do you think that you have someone above you and can cover the sky with one hand in Lucheng?" Zhao Lin laughed loudly. "I will tell you today, in Lucheng, I can really cover the sky with one hand. My uncle is Deng Changming, the owner of Jufu Restaurant. No matter whether it is black or white, he has connections with all the people in the world." I looked at him with contempt. "Oh, Deng Changming? Your uncle really has a good nephew. But you think you can get any benefit from me with this? You are really naive. I give you 3 minutes, get out." Zhao Lin's face turned cold, he stared at me fiercely and shouted, "You're looking for death." He swung his fist at me, but I calmly turned sideways, grabbed his fist and exerted a little force. Zhao Lin screamed, "Ah! Let go!" He threw his other hand at me. I snorted and kicked him in the stomach. He immediately fell to his knees, in a state of disgrace. I punched and kicked him continuously until I was tired. Zhao Lin's face was swollen beyond recognition. He tried to get up, but I kicked him again. "Don't move, squat on the ground and try to move." Zhao Lin gnashed his teeth and said, "Do you know who I am? My uncle is Deng Changming. You are finished. I will not be a human being if I don't take revenge. If you dare to run, I will kill your whole family." I smiled coldly. "Deng Changming? Do you think I'm afraid of him?" I turned to the frightened BMW woman and said coldly, "His uncle is Deng Changming, you should have his phone number, ask his uncle to come over immediately. Hearing this, everyone was stunned, including Zhao Lin, who was completely confused. Ask them to call their uncle over? Is this guy crazy? The BMW woman next to me was also terrified, looking at me as if I were a madman. If Zhao Lin's uncle Deng Changming comes, won't I be dead? I said calmly, why, do you want me to say it again? I don't like trouble. The BMW woman trembled, and quickly took out her cell phone and dialed the number. I went back into the house and said to Zhao Lin coldly, lie down there, if you dare to move, I will beat you again. Zhao Lin's face turned green, and he gritted his teeth, but he didn't dare to move. He was completely subdued by my beating, so how could he dare to resist? I went into the kitchen, cooked myself a bowl of noodles, and ate leisurely on the sofa. My second uncle, father, and mother all looked at me nervously. At this time, hurried footsteps came from the corridor, and a middle-aged man appeared outside the door. His face was livid, and he looked at Zhao Lin lying on the ground, and his face was covered with wounds. What's going on? Deng Changming asked angrily. Zhao Lin yelled frantically, Uncle, why are you talking nonsense to him? Arrest him and make him kowtow and admit his fault. Deng Changming gradually calmed down and looked at me, obviously trying to figure out my identity. He knew that someone who was not afraid of his name must be extraordinary. I am Deng Changming from Jufu Catering. I wonder who you are. How could you do such a cruel thing to my nephew? Deng Changming said. I calmly continued to eat my noodles, completely ignoring him. Your Excellency. Deng Changming was angry. I said calmly, I don't talk about business when I'm eating. Deng Changming was so angry that his face turned blue. He was the boss of Jufu restaurant, but he was left here waiting for me to eat? He said with a sullen face, young people like you are so arrogant that you look down on everyone. I continued to eat my noodles, not caring at all. Well, noodles are still the best way to satisfy your hunger. Deng Changming was speechless, and everyone was stunned. My mother said to me worriedly, son, isn't it bad to leave people out like this? I smiled and said, it's okay. Deng Changming became even more confused. He couldn't figure out my identity. Soon, I finished my noodles, put down my chopsticks, and wiped my mouth with a tissue. Deng Changming said angrily, now, you should have time to talk about business, right? I looked at Zhao Lin coldly as he stood up and said, who allowed you to stand up? Get down. After saying that, I kicked Zhao Lin in the stomach. He bent over again in pain, and I stepped on him hard. Deng Changming's eyes widened and he was shaking with anger, but he knew in his heart that today's situation was far more complicated than he had imagined. Although he had a high status in Lucheng, the young man in front of him was not someone that an ordinary person could afford to offend. Zhao Lin screamed with a ferocious face and shouted, Uncle! Deng Changming suddenly became angry, veins bulged on his forehead and his eyes were full of anger. My name is Lin Chen. I said lightly. Deng Changming was stunned. Lin Chen? I seem to have heard this name somewhere before. If you don't know who I am, you can call and ask your son Deng Hong. Deng Changming frowned slightly, took out his cell phone and dialed Deng Hong's number. Hello? As soon as the call was connected, Deng Changming asked anxiously, do you know someone named Lin Chen? I know him, Dad. What's wrong? Deng Hong was a little curious. Stop talking nonsense. What is the origin of this person? Deng Changming was shocked and asked quickly. Deng Hong was silent for a moment, then slowly said, Dad, has something happened? Brother Lin's identity is not simple, I suggest you apologize obediently. Deng Changming's heart sank, and cold sweat ran down his back. His son had always been arrogant, but now he suggested an apology, which showed that Lin Chen was not simple. Tell me, who is he? He is the chairman of Yuanlong Games, and he has a close relationship with Xiao Ma Gu. Deng Hong's words made Deng Changming gasp and his pupils suddenly contract. This identity is too scary. I snorted coldly and said, Deng Changming, you really have a good nephew. Deng Changming's face turned pale, and he quickly nodded and bowed to me. Mr. Lin, it's a misunderstanding, all a misunderstanding. I never had any nephews, you can do whatever you want with them. Zhao Lin and the BMW girl were both stunned. Deng Changming was so powerful in luching, but now he was as humble as a dog in front of me. This change shocked everyone. Zhao Lin panicked and shouted, "Uncle! You can't just stand by and watch me die. I'm your nephew." Deng Changming's eyes flashed coldly and he roared, "Shut up! You idiot!" He kicked Zhao Lin hard twice. "Uncle, what are you doing?" "Ah!" Zhao Lin screamed, still confused. "With just one word from you, this guy is dead. Why should we be afraid of him?" Deng Changming became even more annoyed and kicked even harder. "Do you know who Mr. Lin is? You are a loser who only causes trouble. Mr. Lin is the chairman of Yuanlong Games, the chairman of a company with a market value of 10 billion. He is friends with Xiao Ma Ge, and you dare to mess with him?" I watched coldly. The BMW girl's face turned pale, and my parents and second uncle were also dumbfounded. "Lin Chen, are you really our son?" Mother looked at me puzzled. I smiled at Zhao Lin and said calmly, "You asked me to kneel down and kowtow just now you will kneel for the rest of your life. Mr. Deng, can you handle this little thing?" Deng Changming nodded repeatedly, "No problem." "Very good, get out of here." I waved my hand, and Deng Changming, Zhao Lin, and the BMW woman fled in a panic. Seeing that my parents and second uncle were still confused, I knew that they would interrogate me again. On the other side, in a small villa in the suburbs of Lucheng, Zhao Lin was drinking and shouting, "Uncle, you kicked too hard just now. Lin Chen is just a lousy chairman, what's so great about him? Even if he is a director of a billion-level company, so what? Can you still be afraid of him in Lucheng?" Deng Changming smoked a cigarette and said calmly, "Okay, stop causing trouble." Zhao Lin chuckled, "I understand, uncle. I will hide in this room for the time being and won't go anywhere. When the storm is over, I will go and settle accounts with those guys." Deng Changming's eyes flashed with coldness, and he stood up and walked outside. Zhao Lin shouted, "Uncle, are you leaving? Be careful on the road." Deng Changming left without even looking back. When they got downstairs, Deng Changming lit a cigarette and a man in a black suit came over. "Boss. Remember, cut off his legs and throw him onto the street. Spread the word that I don't have a nephew like him." Deng Changming's eyes flashed with an icy light. "Yes." The man in black nodded and turned to run upstairs. A few minutes later, a cry of surprise came from the villa area, followed by Zhao Lin's miserable scream. At this time, I made up stories at home to try to comfort my parents. If I didn't find an excuse, they would never be relieved. But the real situation was too bizarre, so I could only make up a story to fool them. "My goodness, Xiaochen, you are so lucky. May the Bodhisattva bless you." The mother clasped her hands together, muttered to herself, and looked nervous. Second uncle looked at me in surprise, his mouth wide open. "Wow, this thing called the stock market, is it really that profitable? You put your money in and rolled it around, and you made several times more." I nodded. "Yes, you can make money in the stock market, but it also depends on luck. Unless you are a very capable person, it is harder to make money in the stock market than to win the lottery. I was lucky in the beginning, so I made some money." Uncle Air nodded, and the light in his eyes gradually faded. He was obviously tempted, but my words made him give up the idea. My mother suddenly spoke up, "Xinshen, you said you were busy with work and didn't have time to fall in love. I made an appointment for you with the daughter of the old Zhao family. We will meet at Anshang Coffee in the central city at noon tomorrow. You can bring a bouquet of roses as a signal." "No, Mom." I was anxious and was about to say something, but my mother continued, "Okay, I've already made an appointment, I can't go back on my word, can I?" Helplessly, I could only smile bitterly. "Okay, I got it. I was thinking about how to deal with it tomorrow." I turned on my phone, sent Lu Lily a mid-autumn festival greeting, and chatted for a while before going to the kitchen to help my mother cook dinner. My father and second uncle were playing chess and watching TV. Soon, dinner was ready. The whole family sat down to eat. My father opened a bottle of Feitian Mutai and drank it with my second uncle. The meal lasted nearly an hour. After dinner, I took a shower and prepared to go to bed. A night passed, and the next morning, I opened my eyes, yawned, walked into the bathroom, started to wash up, and started to sign in. Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. You have received Privileged Yacht Number 1. Privileged Yacht Number 1 is expected to arrive the day after tomorrow. The system prompts me a little confused. What is this thing for? Privileged Yacht Number 1? What does this system want to do? Privileged Yacht Number 1 is a super yacht, 127 meters long, equipped with various luxury facilities, even helicopters and submarines. It's good, but where should I put it? It seems I have to buy a place to park the yacht. I sighed helplessly in my heart. After washing up, I went out for breakfast. Breakfast was over quickly, and I stayed at home with my parents until about 11 o'clock, when my mother urged me to go on a blind date. On the way, I bought a bunch of roses as a signal and headed straight to Anshan Coffee. When I got to the coffee shop, I sat down and ordered a glass of ice water, playing with my phone while waiting. Meanwhile, Zhao Qiqi sent a message to her bestie on the way here. Hey, Lily, my dad introduced me to another blind date. Oh my god, Qiqi, is this true? The blind date your dad introduced last time was a nightmare. That's right. I don't want to go, but my dad said that the blind date candidate is the son of his old friend, who works in Shanghai like me and is not bad looking. I really don't understand what my dad is thinking. Zhao Qiqi said helplessly. Her best friend immediately suggested, connect the microphone to the video chat so I can see what kind of person this blind date is. Wear headphones and I will teach you how to talk. Okay. Zhao Qiqi agreed, started the video call, and then walked into the coffee shop holding her phone. I saw her walking towards me, so I stood up and said with a smile, hello. However, Zhao Qiqi had a cold face and sat down without even showing basic courtesy. You are my blind date today, right? Yes, I'm Lin. I just started to speak when Zhao Qiqi interrupted me. You don't have to introduce yourself. I'm not interested in knowing your name. My time is valuable, just ask directly, she said coldly. I frowned, wondering why my mom introduced such a weird blind date. But this is good, because I was just wondering how to find an excuse to reject her. Please go ahead. I replied calmly. I don't have high requirements for a partner, and your appearance barely meets the requirement. Do you have a BMW or Mercedes worth more than 500,000 yuan? She asked coldly. No. I shook my head. The cheapest car in my collection is a 5 million Rolls-Royce. Okay, then do you have a house in Central in Shanghai? No. I hesitated for a moment and answered. I live in the inner ring. My monthly salary is 10,000 yuan. What about your monthly salary? It should be at least higher than mine. Zhao Qiqi continued to ask. I was about to answer when she said directly, looking at your poor appearance, I guess you don't earn as much as I do. We are not suitable. She waved her hands and continued, a grown man who has no car, no house, and a low salary, is still embarrassed to go out on a blind date? I remained calm, stood up and said, sorry to bother you. Then I turned and left. Many people looked over here with strange eyes. Zhao Qiqi's voice was loud, attracting many people's attention. She was still thanking her bestie with a smile on her face. I walked outside and opened the door of my Night 15. At this moment, I heard a voice exclaiming, oh my god, that Night 15 is actually his? As soon as the words fell, many people nearby looked over, their eyes filled with shock and curiosity. Night 15? What kind of car is that? I've never heard of it. Is it valuable? It's just a broken SUV. What's so surprising about it? Who doesn't have a car at home? Everyone was talking, and I noticed that when Zhao Qiqi looked out the window, her best friend's voice came out. Oh my god, Chi-Chi, what kind of people are there over there? They are so surprised by a car they've never heard of. How expensive can a broken SUV be? Is it more expensive than a BMW? Zhao Chi-Chi nodded. The young man continued, What do you know? This Night 15 is not an ordinary off-road vehicle. The domestic price of this car is as high as 15 million. It is a bulletproof off-road vehicle with an extremely luxurious interior. The whole place fell silent instantly. The young man continued, besides, this car is hard to buy in China. Those who can buy this car are either wealthy businessmen or powerful people. BMW and Mercedes-Benz are not even worthy of carrying shoes in front of it. Everyone was completely dumbfounded. A super luxury car worth 15 million. Those who own this car are all well-known and influential people. Zhao Chi-Chi's face turned pale and she regretted it very much. If it was a normal blind date just now, maybe she would have imagined the life of a rich wife. However, now everything is shattered. Aha! Little bitch. It's all your bad idea. Zhao Chi-Chi yelled furiously at the phone on the spot and had a falling out with her bestie. Why are you yelling? You are an adult, and you don't have any subjective judgment at all, the best friend fought back. In an instant, Zhao Chi-Chi and her bestie were having a crazy quarrel across the phone screen, which attracted a lot of onlookers and they praised their awesome quarreling skills. As for me, I had already driven away, so I naturally didn't know that Zhao Chi-Chi and her bestie were putting on a good show. I reported the blind date to my mother, but she didn't say anything after listening. While driving on the road, I saw Su Jia with a bag on her back. I drove to her side, rolled down the window, and honked the horn. Ha! Mr. Lin? Su Jia was slightly stunned. Get in the car. I called to her. Su Jia got in the car, and I asked, Are you planning to go back to Zhonghai? Well, I came back this time mainly to see my teacher. I didn't expect Luqing to have changed so much. Su Jia sighed. I smiled and said nothing more. She then asked, Mr. Lin, do you have any plans recently? No, just busying myself. I shrugged. Hearing my answer, Su Jia's eyes sparkled. In that case, Director Lin, Xiaoma has a project recently, I wonder if you are interested in getting involved. Hearing this, my eyes lit up. Oh? Tell me about it. Invest in dosha and plan for large-scale entertainment. Su Jia's words shocked me. Dosha, the National Dosha Live broadcast, is a place where young people gather. Although it is not as large as MANHWA Live, it has many young people and strong spending power, attracting many wealthy bosses with high spending power. Invest in Dosha Live. My eyes flickered. It was obvious that Xiao Ma Gu was going to dominate the entertainment industry. This was normal. Xiao Ma Gu had been doing this kind of thing all along, whether it was chat software or other fields. Investing in a live broadcast platform was naturally a big move for him. Xiao Ma Gu tried to win me over just to test my attitude. Investing in Dosha Live is indeed a good move. Although my Yuanlong game has a large share in the foreign market, it has been tepid in China. If I invest in Dosha, I can promote my game to the greatest extent. I raised my lips slightly and checked my bank account, and found that my subsidiaries had recently sent me dividends. Before I knew it, my assets had exceeded 30 billion. Okay, go back and tell Xiaoma that I will invest 5 billion through Junyao Capital to buy shares in Dosha. Su Jia was stunned. 5 billion. Xiaoma Go plans to invest 4 billion this time, and I will invest 5 billion directly. And it is through Junyao Capital. Mr. Lin, you mentioned through Junyao Capital. I calmly said, Junyao Capital is an investment company under my name. Is there any problem? I have many companies under my name now, and I manage them all myself. How can I manage them all? Su Jia swallowed his saliva, feeling a little shocked. Junyao Capital, the largest investment company in the country, is actually mine? By the way, when will Dosha's financing negotiations begin so I can make arrangements first? I took out my cell phone and prepared to contact the person in charge of Junyao Capital. The day after tomorrow. Su Jia answered, swallowing. I understand. I nodded and called Zhang Yaohua, the head of Junyao Capital. Chairman, what can I do for you? A respectful voice came from the other end of the phone. I will transfer 5 billion to the company's account. When Dosha raises its E round of financing the day after tomorrow, you will take over Dosha. Okay, Chairman. After hanging up the phone, Zhang Yaohua breathed a sigh of relief and whispered to himself, this is the first time the new chairman has given an order. I must do it well and not leave a bad impression. I said to Su Jia, let's go eat something together. Okay. She nodded. I drove to the nearby Fanju Wanhui, and we went upstairs to a Western restaurant. I ordered 2 steaks and some appetizers, salads, and desserts. How is it like working at Penguin Group? I asked. Su Jia smiled helplessly and shook his head, what else can I do? I was transferred to the board of directors. My salary didn't increase much, but my workload became heavier. It's all because someone suddenly became the company's major shareholder. I smiled awkwardly and touched my nose, sorry. Lunch was over quickly, and we had a cup of coffee and left. After I dropped Su Jia off at the station, I drove home and sat on the sofa to play games. Look at you. You just play with your phone all day long and never do any housework. My mother kept muttering beside me. Then I'll go do some housework. I stood up. Is the floor you mop real floor? Where's the mud? The dishes you wash are all oil. Dad interrupted. My mother continued, look at Xiao Jiang next door. He does his housework diligently and now has a girlfriend. Look at you, you hold your phone all day and don't even have a partner. No, Mom, I have a partner. I said helplessly. Don't talk nonsense. If you have a partner, why don't you bring him back? Let me show you a photo. I was just about to take out the photo of me and Lu Lily when my mother continued, okay, just fool us. We don't know how to use mobile phones anyway, so how do we know if this photo of yours is from the internet? I felt like I had been hit by 1,000 critical hits, so I decided to shut up. If I continued, it would only make me feel worse. Anyway, I was going back to Shanghai tomorrow. Time flies, and another whole day has passed. The next morning, I signed in as usual. Congratulations to the host, the sign-in is successful. Obtained, private island in the East China Sea, coordinates. This island has been developed, has complete facilities, and is highly secure. I was a little confused when I saw this prompt. A private island? This system is getting more and more outrageous. Last night the system prompted that my yacht would arrive tomorrow. It seems that I have to consider going to the island in 2 days. If the island is habitable, maybe I can take my parents there to live for a while. Thinking about it, I talked to my parents and drove straight to the airport in Heian. I had already greeted the crew last night and the route was set up properly. When I arrived in Heian City and got on the plane, I closed my eyes and rested on the plane. As for my car, it was transported by the transport plane next to it. This time, because I was traveling alone, the journey seemed particularly relaxing. After returning to Shanghai, I had nothing to do for the time being, so I planned to ask Lu Lily out for a date. After all, we hadn't seen each other for a while. I called Lu Lily, hello, Lily, where are you now? She choked up and said, Brother Lin, my mom is in trouble and is being rescued now. Hearing this, my brows furrowed immediately, don't cry, tell me which hospital you are in, and I will go over to accompany you. After she gave me the address, I immediately drove to the affiliated hospital of Shanghai Medical College. When I arrived at the hospital, I saw 4 people standing outside the emergency room, and Lu Lily was squatting beside them crying. When she saw me, she immediately rushed over to me. Brother Lin, she cried. I stroked her hair and comforted her, it's okay, I'm here. At this time, a middle-aged man came over, looked at me and said, you must be Lily's boyfriend. Excuse me, who are you? I asked. Oh, I'm Lily's uncle, my name is Lu Chunlai, he introduced. Hello, uncle. I nodded and then asked, what happened? Lu Chunlai had a complicated expression, sighed and said, it was a car accident. Car accident? Where is the person who caused it? A cold light flashed in my eyes. I'm going home. Lily replied, sobbing. My expression became even colder. You went home after hitting someone? What kind of identity do you have? The uncle smiled bitterly and said, we want to keep him, but he is a rich second generation, and ordinary people like us don't have the ability to keep him. I shook my head and sneered, he's just a rich second generation, can he just go home after hitting someone? Lily felt the evil spirit on me and was a little afraid to look me in the eye. She hesitated for a moment, but decided to make things clear. My mother was hit by a car when she was crossing the road that day. The driver insisted that my mother ran a red light, but there was no surveillance nearby and no one could prove that he was lying. Now my mother is still in critical condition and no one can testify. I frowned, but this is not the reason for him to go home, right? Who can blame him for being rich? He authorized a lawyer to handle the matter and told us to go find his lawyer if we want to negotiate, Lily said helplessly. A bullet-headed teenager next to him shouted angrily, is there no justice? Just because you have money, you can do whatever the law is? The mean woman shouted, that's enough. Why are you butting in when the adults are talking? But, Mom, about my aunt's matter, the boy wanted to argue, but the woman glared at him and he dared not say anything more. The uncle smiled bitterly and said, we found several lawyers, but the other lawyers were too famous and had a high success rate. As soon as we mentioned the other party's name, these lawyers refused to accept the case. A thin man wearing black-framed glasses came over and said coldly, it's useless for you to sue. I'll tell you the truth, with me here, your chances of winning are less than 5%. There are no more than 10 lawyers in Shanghai who are willing to take this case. When everyone heard this, they all gnashed their teeth and felt extremely angry. The lawyer continued, I reiterate that our employer is willing to pay 200,000 yuan as humanitarian aid and hope that this will be the end of the matter. Lily yelled hysterically, don't even think about it. Who wants your filthy little money? The boy who had been silent couldn't help but said, yes, you want to end it with 200,000? I'll give you 1 million. Pull that rich second generation over here and I'll hit him. The uncle said coldly, we will never agree to this condition. You hit someone and you still want to settle it? Impossible. If you don't apologize, we will see you in court. The lawyer sneered, see you in court? Fine, I want to see what kind of lawyer you can hire. I advise you poor bastards not to push your luck. My employer is willing to pay 200,000, which is already a favor. Don't be too greedy, otherwise you won't get a penny. I narrowed my eyes and looked at the lawyer in front of me with indifference. The people around me became angry. You. Lily was about to say something but was stopped by me. I walked up to the lawyer and said coldly, in that case, we'll see you in court. The lawyer frowned and looked at me, who are you? I'm Lily's boyfriend, I smiled, as for whether I can hire a lawyer, you don't have to worry about that. I took out my cell phone and dialed the sealed number. Boss, what's the matter? Feng Yin's voice was respectful and calm. Send a team of lawyers to the entrance of the emergency room of the Shanghai Medical College Hospital immediately. Okay, boss. After hanging up the phone, the lawyer looked confused and sneered, you can brag all you want. What legal team? Do you think you are in a movie? Can a poor idiot like you afford a legal team? I said calmly and indifferently, I hope you won't leave. My legal team will be here soon. He sneered and shook his head, obviously not believing it. Time passed by minute, and about 10 minutes later, footsteps sounded not far from the emergency room. Everyone looked over and saw 5 men in black suits, wearing gold badges and carrying briefcases walking towards us. Leading the way is Robin. I was also a little surprised to see Robin coming in person. I didn't expect that the seal would send him. The lawyer was completely dumbfounded. He stood there blankly and muttered to himself, "Robin, Robin?" He couldn't believe that Robin actually came with a team of lawyers. Didn't they say that Robin rarely takes cases anymore? How could this happen? The lawyer was completely confused. Lou Lily's uncle was also stunned. "It's Lawyer Robin? Who is Lily's boyfriend?" Lou Lily's face was filled with shock. She had never thought that I could summon a team of lawyers with just one phone call. The lawyers walked up to me and bowed in unison, "Boss." "Yeah." I nodded, then looked at the lawyer opposite me and said coldly, "From now on, this car accident case will be handled entirely by the lawyers of Quanjim Law Firm. Lily, do you agree?" Lou Lily nodded blankly, "Okay." She, her uncle, and the lawyer on the other side were all dumbfounded. Robin called me boss, which meant that Quanjing Law Firm was mine. Robin nodded and said, "Don't worry, boss. Now that we have taken over this case, I am confident that we can make the other lawyer regret taking on this case." He turned to look at the other lawyer and said coldly, "This car accident case will be handled entirely by our legal team." The opposing lawyer had cold sweat on his forehead. Although he had a high chance of winning, he was facing a team of lawyers, led by Robin. He knew that he was likely to lose this battle. Facing the rich second-generation lawyer, I narrowed my eyes and looked indifferent. The people around me became angry. Lou Lily was about to say something, but I stopped her. "In that case, see you in court," I said coldly. The lawyer frowned at me and asked, "Who are you?" "I'm Lily's boyfriend," I smiled. "As for a lawyer, don't worry, we definitely have one." I took out my cell phone and called phone in, send a team of lawyers over to the emergency room of the Zhenghai Medical College Hospital immediately. "Okay, boss." Feng Yin's voice was as calm as ever. After hanging up the phone, the lawyer looked confused and then sneered, "Go ahead and brag. What's this? You still have a legal team? Do you think you're in a movie?" I said calmly and indifferently, "I hope you won't leave. My legal team will be here soon." He sneered and shook his head, obviously not believing it. Time passed little by little, and about 10 minutes later, footsteps came from not far from the emergency room. 5 men in black suits, wearing gold badges and carrying briefcases walked towards us. Leading the way is Robin. I was also a little surprised to see Robin coming in person. The lawyer was completely dumbfounded, standing there blankly muttering to himself, "Robin, Robin?" He couldn't believe that Robin actually came with a team of lawyers. At this time, he quickly took out his mobile phone and made an anxious call. "Mr. Qian, something has happened here. You'd better come here in person," the lawyer said anxiously. An angry roar came from the other end of the phone. "What do you mean? I paid you so much lawyer fees, and now you tell me that something has changed?" The other side hired a team of lawyers, led by Robin. The lawyer explained tremblingly. There was a sudden silence on the other end of the phone, and Xian Xiao was sweating profusely. He gritted his teeth and said, "Hold them steady, I'll be right over." After hanging up the phone, he quickly put on his clothes and left in a hurry. The two people on the bed looked at him in dismay and left, looking at each other in bewilderment. On the other side, the lawyer said to Robin with a smile, "Lawyer Luo, my employer will be here soon, please wait." Robin nodded and continued to discuss something with other lawyers. I sat aside and comforted Lou Lily. The uncle remained silent, while the mean woman was shamelessly trying to be nice to me, which made me roll my eyes. Half an hour later, the operation was over. Lou Lily's mother was temporarily out of danger and was transferred to the ICU. I helped pay for the hospitalization fee. Finally, a young man walked over quickly. When the lawyer saw him, his eyes lit up and he hurried up to him and whispered. Lou Lily became excited, and I patted her hands and signaled her to calm down. A few minutes later, the lawyer explained the situation in detail, and Xian Xiao walked towards us with a gleam in his eyes. "Are you Zhao Xiuying's daughter?" Xian Xiao looked at Lou Lily. Lou Lily nodded and looked at me hesitantly, obviously considering me as her backbone. Xian Xiao smiled and looked at me and said, "Have you discussed it?" How much money do you want to give my girlfriend so that she will not pursue this matter? And then you ask about my identity. Do you want to do business with me? I smiled contemptuously and said calmly, who said I wanted to deal with you? You hit someone and you want to settle it with money? Lu Lili blushed, and Xian Xiao's expression froze. He did intend to do this, but he didn't expect to be exposed by me. Looking at the young man in front of me, I narrowed my eyes slightly. He put away his smile and said calmly, Mr. Lin, you are also a social elite and a successful person. My family is in the real estate business, and Dalong Real Estate belongs to us. This time, let's just treat it as a good relationship and donate 5 million yuan. What do you think? As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Lili's aunt's face suddenly changed from disdain to staring with eyes wide open, breathing heavily. Lu Lili raised her head, her red eyes filled with anger. Don't even think about it. You hit someone and you didn't even apologize. The mean aunt ran to Lu Lili and said anxiously, I'm sorry, let's discuss it again. She turned to Lu Lili and said anxiously, Lily. Are you crazy? This is 5 million. 5 million. How can you refuse? Xian Xiao showed a contemptuous smile on his face, obviously thinking that the 5 million yuan was enough to solve the problem. Lu Lili was anxious, but aunt. My aunt continued to persuade me, Lily, you have to think it over carefully. This incident has already happened. There is not much chance of winning the lawsuit, and it will waste time and money. Even if you win, it's just an apology. What's the point? You might as well take the 5 million and live a good life. Obviously, my aunt wanted to borrow a portion of the 5 million. Lu Lili was so angry that she almost laughed. How could she have such a relative? At this time, my uncle shouted angrily, Enough! My aunt shut up immediately, and my uncle continued, This matter can't end like this. What we need is an apology, not 5 million. Can this guy buy his conscience with 5 million without even an apology? Xian Xiao's face gradually turned cold. You are looking for death. It seems that you don't know the strength of our Dalong Real Estate. He looked at me with a sneer, but I remained calm, picked up the phone and took a look, with the corners of my mouth slightly raised. Oh, Dalong Real Estate. I said indifferently, you have a lot of dark history. In May 2017, you used violent means to forcibly purchase 13 houses in Zhonghai Old Town. In September 2017, you violently demolished 280 houses in the Old Town and made a profit of 2.83 billion. In 2018. I read out the details one by one, and cold sweat continued to flow down Xian Xiao's forehead. When I finished speaking, he looked horrified and asked, How do you know so much? I sneered, Do you think I have waited for you for so long and done nothing? I have dug up all the dirty deeds of your Dalong Real Estate. After a while, my lawyers will come to your door one by one, and then you can consider how to deal with us. After saying that, I stood up and looked at Xian Xiao coldly. His face was ferocious, and he gritted his teeth and said, Boy. You wait for me. Be careful when you walk at night next time, don't get hit by a club. I raised an eyebrow at Robin and said calmly, Did you record it? Everything is recorded, boss. Robin nodded. Great, if anything happens to me, give the recording to the police, I said calmly. Xian Xiao's face turned pale, his eyes went dark, and he fainted. He knew that this time he was completely finished. The dark history of Dalong Real Estate was exposed, and he would face serious consequences. I turned to look at Lu Lili calmly and said with a smile, Okay, the matter is basically resolved. The next step is to leave it to the lawyers. Lu Lili blushed and nodded. My aunt looked distraught, and the boy next to her shook his head and sighed. My uncle looked at me a few more times. Since Lu Lili's mother needed to rest, I did not continue to disturb her and left the hospital alone. On the way back, Lin Chen was also thinking there. Indeed, it is true that the money is too little, and one's own safety seems to be really a problem. Until now, I don't have a bodyguard or anything like that. It seems that I have to find a way to equip 1 or 2 bodyguards. The day passed quickly. The next morning, I woke up and said habitually, "System, sign in." Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. Obtained, biochemical bodyguard, female, *15. I was immediately confused. What the hell? Just as I was confused, there was a knock on the door. I walked over curiously and opened the door. 15 pretty girls wearing black tights stood outside. As the door opened, they all walked in. As soon as they entered the room, they began to look around. "Safety confirmed," said a young girl in the lead, then knelt on one knee, followed by the remaining 14 people. "Master, the biochemical bodyguard is here to report." The scene before me completely stunned me. This sudden scene was like a plot from a science fiction movie, and I didn't know what to say for a moment. Are you really biochemical bodyguards?" I asked tentatively. The leading girl nodded, "Yes, master. We are made with the most advanced biochemical technology and are specifically responsible for protecting your safety." After hearing this, I gradually relaxed and began to look at these 15 biochemical bodyguards. Are you protecting me 24 hours a day? Will this interfere with my normal life? Don't worry, master. We will protect you in secret and resolve any danger that threatens you. Number 1 replied. I nodded, "Okay, then what should I call you?" "Master, you can call me number 1, this is number 2. Soon, I memorized the numbers of the 15 people, and after some understanding and fighting, I found that even if there were 10 of me, I would not be a match for number 1. This made me feel at ease. As long as I didn't encounter heavy weapons, there would be no worries about safety. Okay, good, send 3 people to protect my parents, and the rest stay with me. I pondered for a moment and arranged the personnel. After all, as my wealth increases, my parents may become a target and they need protection. Yes, master. Number 1 responded and began to arrange for manpower. At this moment, my cell phone rang. Hello. I answered the phone. Hello, are you Mr. Lin Chunlin? A sweet voice came from the other end of the phone. Yes, I am. Mr. Lin, we are the Iwaido Yacht 4S store. The privilege number 1 yacht you purchased has arrived at the store. Do you have time to come over? Oh, sure. I'll go now. After hanging up the phone, I realized that this was the privilege I had gained by signing in before. Yacht number 1 had arrived. I drove to the 4S store and saw a Pagani Huayra parked at the door, which attracted many people's amazement. When the store owner saw the car, his eyes widened and he said, "What the hell? Pagani Huayra? Welcome, young man, are you here to buy a yacht?" The shop owner walked forward, rubbing his hands. Someone just called me and said that my privilege 1 yacht has arrived. I said lightly. The shop owner was shocked. Are you Mr. Lin Chen? It's me. I nodded. No need to see ID, please come in. The boss waved his hands and led me into the store. Heavy truck and yacht in the backyard. We came to the backyard, where a heavy truck was loaded with the white privilege 1 yacht. The yacht had 5 decks and was equipped with a jet ski, a helicopter, and a small submarine. This privilege number 1 is equipped with a jet ski, a helicopter, and a huge loading space, with a small submarine underneath, the boss introduced. I nodded. Although I looked calm on the surface, my heart was already filled with turmoil. This was not a yacht, but a small cruise ship. Standing in front of this huge ship, I felt an unprecedented sense of accomplishment. This privilege 1 would be a new starting point for me to conquer the ocean. Everyone, enjoy your meal and have fun today. I'll open another bottle of Conti later and we can taste it together. As I said this, I raised my glass. Woohoo! Master Lin is so generous. Brother Lin is awesome. In an instant, everyone became excited. Hey, Brother Lin, where is your yacht heading? It seems like the direction ahead is a private island, right? Someone asked in confusion. No. Brother Lin, I told you to turn around but you didn't listen. Now, the owner of the opposite island has discovered us, another person complained. I looked calm, glanced at everyone, and said to the biochemical bodyguard beside me, "Go, notify the other side and tell them that I'm here, and ask them to let me pass." These second generations looked at each other in bewilderment. "Brother Lin, is it possible that the owner of this island is your friend?" Zhang Ming couldn't help but ask. "Because this island belongs to me." My words caused the whole audience to fall silent instantly. This island is his? In the cabin, there were sounds of people sucking in their breath. Everyone looked at me with shock in their eyes. Even Zhang Ming was stunned. He swallowed his saliva and was shocked. It's really scary. I thought that being able to afford Privilege 1 and a Pagani wind god was all I had. Unexpectedly, this was just the tip of the iceberg. The more you look into my background, the more you will find that I am unfathomable. When the next morning came, I signed in as usual. There was nothing special about today's sign-in, just 1 billion in cash. Cash, okay. I shook my head helplessly and got up from the bed. Looking at the sea outside the window, I was in a trance. Half a month ago, I was still worried about money, but now, the sign-in earned 1 billion, but it did not stir up the slightest ripple in my heart. Too much money is also a worry. I sighed silently in my heart, shook my head helplessly, stood up, and put on my watch. At this moment, I felt that everything in the world was so boring and dull. After washing up, I went downstairs. At this time, many second-generation people had already gotten up. Seeing me coming downstairs, they all nodded in greeting. At this time, Zhang Ming came over and said to me, "Brother Lin, I have an auction here and would like to invite you to go." Auction? What's being auctioned? I looked at him and asked. Oh, it's a real estate auction that Kai Kuan's family is going to hold tonight, mainly for some higher-priced villas. I thought if you are free, you could go over and have fun together. Zhang Ming explained. Villa? I pondered for a moment and nodded. Yes, today my company, Datang Real Estate, is going to auction off the large-scale properties that have been accumulated over the past 3 years. For example, Villa Number 1 in Yundian Villa has never been sold because it is too large, and there is also Longting Villa in the Faitsua Villa area. These have not been sold because they are too large. Zhang Ming continued. Hearing this, my eyes sparkled. Yundian Number 1 Villa. This is a huge villa, 487 square meters, including a huge courtyard and underground parking garage. If I can take a picture of it, it can solve the storage problem of Privilege Number 1. Okay, I also plan to buy a villa for fun. I nodded in agreement. Everyone present suddenly twitched their eyes. Buy a villa for fun. You know, the cheapest villa in this auction costs 80 to 90 million. Although they can afford it, they can't say it as easily as I do, as if they are buying a toy. Soon, we finished breakfast, played golf on the island for a while, and returned to Huangpu Wharf at noon. I rented a place at the wharf and temporarily stored the yacht there, then said goodbye to everyone and returned home. After returning home, I took a shower, changed my clothes, and called Lu Lily to ask about her situation. After that, I sat on the sofa watching TV and playing with my phone. At 7 o'clock in the evening, after receiving a call from Zhang Ming, I drove my McLaren P1 straight to the Tianyue Hotel. Tianyue Hotel is a 5-star hotel and also owned by Kai Kuan's family. When I arrived, Kai Kuan and Zhang Ming were already waiting at the door. When they saw Lin Chen in my car, their eyes twitched again. Although this McLaren P1 was not as stunning as the Pagani Fengshan and Privilege Number 1 yacht yesterday, it still surprised them. Welcome, young man, are you here to buy a yacht? The shop owner walked forward, rubbing his hands. Someone just called me and said that my Privilege 1 yacht has arrived. I said lightly. The shop owner was shocked. Are you Mr. Lin Chen? It's me. I nodded. No need to see ID, please come in. The boss waved his hands and led me into the store. We came to the backyard, where a heavy truck was loaded with the white Privilege 1 yacht. The yacht had 5 decks and was equipped with a jet ski, a helicopter, and a small submarine. This privilege number 1 is equipped with a jet ski, a helicopter, and a huge loading space, with a small submarine underneath, the boss introduced. I nodded. Although I looked calm on the outside, my heart was already filled with turmoil. This was not a yacht, it was simply a small cruise ship. The next day, I attended the most exclusive auction in the city. The highlight of the auction was a luxury villa, with a starting price of 500 million yuan, and each bid could not be less than 2 million yuan. When this price was announced, many wealthy people with limited financial resources took a deep breath and looked a little nervous. On the contrary, I sat there calmly, waiting for the opportunity to bid. "I'll offer 520 million, someone shouted. 540 million. 600 million. In an instant, bidding sounds came one after another, and the scene was extremely intense. I felt it was time to make a move, so I pulled myself together and said calmly, "I'll pay 880 million yuan." The previous bids increased by 2 million each time, but I directly increased the price by 50 million, which shocked many people. At this moment, Reese next to him suddenly rang the bell and shouted, "I'll give 900 million." Reese looked very proud and sat there with his head held high. The others looked at each other in bewilderment, because the price of 900 million was already obviously overpriced. The 880 million I offered before had already reached the price limit of this villa. Looking at Reese, I narrowed my eyes slightly and said calmly, 910 million. Reese was obviously irritated, his anger rising. He snorted coldly, slammed the bell in front of him, and shouted loudly, "I bid 1.1 billion. The whole audience was in an uproar. Directly raising the price by 100 million was simply crazy. The others began to laugh. Reese's face turned pale and he could only grit his teeth and swallow it. Just then, my cell phone vibrated. "Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully and obtained 80% equity of M1NT Global Holdings." I was a little confused when I heard this, and I immediately took out my phone to check. When I saw the information of this global holding company, I was completely stunned. This global holding company is the parent company of the world's largest billionaire club, including the M1NT Billionaire Club. This club is the world's top membership-based wealthy business consumption venue. Even the top rich people have to invest a lot of money in the club before they are eligible to become members. The minimum investment scale is 50,000 mi-gold and the maximum is 500,000 mi-gold. At this moment, I couldn't help swallowing, "This is so cool." I felt excited in my heart and couldn't help swallowing again. Just then, the car slowly stopped. "Master, we're here." "Yeah." I nodded, my heart full of anticipation for the future. When I got home, I explained the situation to Chinzirua, asked him to prepare the materials, and then I went to bed early. There was no conversation that night. The next morning, I woke up and went to the bathroom to sign in while taking a shower. System, sign in. Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. Obtained, Lamborghini Veneno Hardtop Edition. When I heard the prompt, I was startled and my eyes suddenly lit up. Lamborghini Veneno, this is one of the world's top supercars. There are only 14 limited editions in the world, and there are only 5 hardtop versions, of which 2 red versions are not for sale. In other words, there are only 3 hardtop Lamborghini Venenos for sale. It's actually the Lamborghini Veneno? Surprise flashed across my eyes, the corners of my mouth curled up, and I murmured, "Interesting." After drying myself, I left the bathroom. After breakfast, I hurried to the underground parking lot downstairs. In the parking lot, a fiery red Lamborghini Veneno was parked next to my McLaren. I walked over to the Veneno, reached out and gently touched the car body with a smile on my face. "Number 1, you sit in the passenger seat, I'll drive today," I said to number 1. After all, this is a Lamborghini Veneno, I want to experience it myself. "Yes." Number 1 nodded and got into the passenger seat. I got in the car and stepped on the accelerator. With a violent roar, the car slowly drove out of the underground parking lot. Along the way, I drove the Lamborghini Veneno on the streets and finally drove onto the Ring Expressway. I began to accelerate gradually. Many car owners saw this Lamborghini Veneno and gave way, subconsciously slowed down and kept a safe distance. As a result, the traffic on the Ring Expressway became a bit crowded. After a circle, I fully experienced the performance of the poison. If it weren't for the speed limit, I could have gone a few points faster. Ha ha ha. So cool. I grinned, got off the ring road, and headed straight for Yuanlong Games. When I arrived at the science park, this rather dazzling Lamborghini Veneno attracted a lot of people's attention, and everyone cast envious glances at me. I parked the car in the parking lot and went straight to the meeting room after getting out of the car. Shen Ziruo was already waiting in the meeting room, and the company's general manager Zhou Nan and 3 vice presidents were also present. When they saw me come in, everyone stood up. Director Lin. Well, everyone please sit down first. I believe you all already know about today's signing, so I won't say much. The people from Penguin Group and Dosha Live should be here soon. Do you have any opinions about this signing? If you do, you can raise them now. The whole place was silent, no one dared to express any opinion. Well, very good. At this time, the door of the conference room opened again, and Xiaoma Gu, Gao Lijie, Robin and Fomin walked in. Ha, Mr. Ma, Mr. Gao, I'm sorry for not welcoming you. I looked at the two and said. The senior executives of Yuanlong Games were stunned and excited. It turned out that Dosha Live and Penguin Group attached so much importance to this signing that the chairman personally came out. Brother Ma smiled and said, Mr. Lin, you are too polite. I don't know why, but there was a little traffic jam on the Ring Expressway today, so I was a little late when I got here. But I happened to meet Mr. Gao, Lawyer Robin, and Lawyer Fomin. Hearing this, I couldn't help but feel embarrassed, so I touched my nose and said with a smile, it's okay, come on, please take a seat. The signing officially begins. Number 1. I shouted in front of Du Yao. As soon as I finished speaking, Number 1 came out from the bushes next to me. Ah! Lu Lily was startled. It's okay, this is my bodyguard, he usually hides in the dark to protect me. I comforted her. Lu Lily nodded, but she was still a little surprised. She looked at Number 1 and felt a little worried. Number 1 was too big and taller than her. This feeling was simply unsettling. Number 1, please help me drive the car back and leave the security work to others. I ordered. Yes. Number 1 nodded, took Du's car keys, started the engine, and drove away. Watching Number 1 leave, Lu Lily stuck out her tongue and said, Brother Lin, she is so amazing. There was a hint of envy in her tone. Although she didn't know the specific identity of Number 1, she could feel that Number 1 was not simple and that his aura was not comparable to that of ordinary people. She is mainly responsible for my safety. I said with a smile, and then put my arm around Lu Lily's waist. She will protect us in the future, too. Lu Lily blushed slightly, and was touched in her heart. After all, she was an ordinary little girl with a simple mind. When she heard me say this, she was immediately moved. Brother Lin, my husband, you are so good to me. She snuggled up to me, her voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz. Listening to her words, the corners of my mouth curled up, and I whispered in her ear, Hey, I prefer you to call me daddy at night rather than calling me husband. Lu Lily's face instantly turned red, and her cheeks were burning. Husband. You are so mean, she said angrily. I laughed out loud and held her all the way back home. Soon, creaking sounds were heard in the room. Lin Chen's high-energy counterattack. After the interview, Xiaosao looked at me with a complicated expression, not knowing what to say. I smiled and invited him to have lunch together before we parted ways. At the same time, my live video was recorded and posted online, instantly attracting the attention of major media. Although my company tried to limit the popularity, it was unable to stop the topic from spreading. On the Weibo hot search list, my pretentious quotes occupied the top 3. I'm not interested in money. It's only 120 million. There's no need to pay. Shocked. Young Master Lin is taking advantage of CCTV. Suddenly, the entire internet was discussing my remarks, and even the all-star cast of ghost videos joined me. A small internet celebrity was so angry that he smashed his phone when he saw that the popularity he had invested millions of dollars to gain was not as high as that of an interview with me. Although I haven't paid much attention to the situation on the internet, I have heard that the sales of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds have increased by leaps and bounds because of this, and the production team even thought that someone was inflating the sales. When they found out that it was me who brought the popularity, the production team gasped in shock. That day, Xiaosa and I finished lunch and returned to the office to check the company's information. The office had been cleaned and the previous logo had been removed. At this time, the landline suddenly rang. "Hello," I answered the phone. "Mr. Lin, someone wants to meet with you." It was Chen Zirua on the other end of the phone. "Who is it?" I asked. "It's a director of Facebook abroad, Randy Zuckerberg." Chen Zirua replied. "The director of Facebook?" I was stunned. Facebook and our company have no business overlap. Why did they come to me? "I see, let her in," I said. "Okay, Mr. Lin. By the way, Chao Weigua, the CEO of the domestic Grooms Weibo account, has also made an appointment to meet with you in an hour. Do you want to cancel the meeting?" Chen Zirua asked. "No need, let's proceed as planned," I responded. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the office door, and Chen Zirua led Randy in. Randy looked to be about 40 years old, well-maintained, with a smile on his face. "Hello, Mr. Lin Chen." Randy smiled and shook hands with me. "Hello, Ms. Randy, please take a seat," I responded with a smile. "Mr. Lin, I'm here this time hoping to reach a business cooperation with you," Randy said with a smile. "Business cooperation?" I raised my eyebrows and motioned for her to continue. "Yes, we hope to cooperate with you to promote our company's Facebook page through a joint activity with the game PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds." Randy approached me with a charming smile on his face. "Oh?" My eyes flickered. I always felt that her purpose was not just simple cooperation. "If Mr. Lin is willing, we can sign the contract now," Randy said, quietly sticking a button on the sofa behind me. Seeing this, I suddenly grabbed her wrist and twisted it back. "But I'm sorry, Ms. Randy, I am a married man. I hope you can explain what this is." I loosened her hand with force, and the button-type bug fell to the ground. "This." Randy panicked and wanted to explain something, but I didn't give her any chance and directly asked Chen Zirua to call the police. Soon, the officials took Randy away. I sat in the office with a flickering eye and a cold smile on my face. Facebook's use of such despicable means to steal our information has completely angered me. "Since you use such means, don't blame me for being rude, Facebook." I sneered, picked up my phone, and started looking for a phone number. At the same time, a car arrived downstairs of the company, and things seemed far from over. Downstairs, a Maybach was parked at the entrance. After the door opened, a young man walked out of the car and respectfully opened the door for a middle-aged man in the back seat. The middle-aged man was dressed in a suit and had a dignified look. He was Chao Weigua from the Grooms Company. Although the Grooms Company is currently facing many difficulties, it still has a certain position in the domestic portal websites. Chao Weigua took a deep breath and asked his secretary to call Chen Zirua. After Chen Zirua received the call upstairs, he knocked on the door of Lin Chen's office. "Director Lin, the Grooms Chao Weigua is here." Lin Chen nodded, looked at the phone in his hand, and said, "Let him come up and wait for a while. I'll go see him after I finish this call." Chen Zirua responded, and then explained the situation to Chao Weigua's secretary on the other end of the phone. After hanging up the phone, Chao Weigua and the secretary took the elevator upstairs. In the elevator, Chao Weigua's secretary couldn't help but say, "Boss Chao, this Lin Chen is really too arrogant. You came to visit in person, but he actually asked you to wait." Chao Weigua frowned and shouted in a deep voice, "Shut up. You don't know Lin Chen's strength. He is definitely not someone we can afford to provoke." The elevator door opened, and Chao Weigua and his secretary saw Chen Zirua standing at the door. Chao Weigua smiled and walked over to Chen Zirua, shaking his hand and saying, "Hello, Secretary Chen." "Hello, Mr. Chao. Mr. Lin is still on the phone. Please wait a moment." Chao Weigua smiled and said, "No problem." Chao Weigua's secretary was shocked, and his impression of Lin Chen became even deeper. After all, someone who could be treated so seriously by Chao Weigua must be no ordinary person. As soon as the two sat down, they heard Lin Chen's angry voice coming from the office. "Great. They dare to do this on a crappy social networking site? They are looking for death." When Chao Weigua heard this, his heart skipped a beat and he instantly fell off his chair. He thought to himself, "Is Lin Chen talking about the groom?" But he didn't remember the groom ever offending Lin Chen. Lin Chen continued, "Don't keep complaining. I only have one request. I want this company to completely disappear from this world." Lin Chen's tone was cold and angry, and he was obviously completely enraged. When Chao Weigua heard this, his face turned pale and he collapsed to the ground. He couldn't imagine how they would respond if Lin Chen really targeted the groom. Chen Zirua walked in with tea in his hand. Seeing this scene, he was stunned. "What's going on here?" Chao Weigua looked up at Chen Zirua and spoke with difficulty. "Secretary Chen, does Director Lin have any misunderstandings about our groom? Please help tell Director Lin that we absolutely have no intention of offending him." Chen Zirua frowned and said, "Boss Chao, I don't think Mr. Lin is talking about your groom's company." "Don't worry. Please wait a moment. I will arrange for you to meet Mr. Lin as soon as possible." Chao Weigua nodded, wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and calmed down a little. However, he was still a little uneasy in his heart, and he decided to clarify the matter after meeting Lin Chen. Soon, Lin Chen finished the call and walked into the reception room. He looked at Chao Weigua, who looked panicked, and said with a smile, "Mr. Chao, sorry for the wait. Please take a seat." Chao Weigua quickly stood up and said respectfully, "Director Lin, you are busy, I dare not disturb you. I came here today to discuss some cooperation matters with you, and hope to get your advice." Lin Chen nodded and motioned him to sit down, wondering in his heart what Chao Weigua wanted to talk to him about. When I told them all this, the atmosphere in the room froze instantly. The two financial giants looked at each other, their eyes full of fear and confusion. White Rockefeller and Baron Pence, they obviously didn't expect that I actually held such an earth-shattering secret. "What? You have some very unreliable information?" There was disbelief in their voices. I raised the corners of my mouth, picked up my phone, glanced at the email I had just received, and responded lightly, "Of course. If I didn't have some real ability, would I dare to say such a thing in this situation?" Their expressions suddenly became complicated. Rockefeller shook his head and said, "Boss Lin, even we have difficulty obtaining information of this level." "Do you really have this information?" I smiled faintly and did not directly answer their questions. Then, I asked Chen Zirua to turn on the projector and couldn't wait to show the information in my hand. An extremely detailed document appeared on the projection screen. The document listed everything from Tae-Meipu's upbringing to his first love, and even when he had his first date and what he did. It can be said that this document was so detailed that it was almost an encyclopedia of Tae-Meipu's life. I saw the faces of the two giants change from shock to horror. Their backs gradually went cold, and they obviously realized the seriousness of this information. Then, the file jumped to the records of Tae-Meipu's cooperation with the Morgan Consortium before and after his appointment, and the records of bacteria and virus experiments. The shocking secret of successfully manufacturing and selling biological weapons was exposed on the screen. This record not only describes the process of the experiment in detail, but also reveals the scandal that Trump went so far as to start a war and destroy a country in order to cover up his crimes. The detailed timeline and evidence in the document shocked the two men like never before. There was fear and uneasiness in the eyes of White Rockefeller and Baron Pence. They realized that if this information was leaked, Trump would not only be forced to resign, but might even face more severe punishment. Gulp! The two swallowed their saliva, their hearts filled with despair and fear. I saw their expressions gradually change from shock to excitement. Obviously, they have seen the great potential brought by this information to make Trump face severe sanctions, or even more extreme consequences. I raised the corner of my mouth and said, "If you think this information is useful, then think about it carefully. After all, you should know how big a storm the disclosure of these secrets will cause." They looked at each other, and finally nodded palely under the shock of my words. Obviously, they have realized the power of this information, and they know that once the secret is made public, the Trump administration may be in danger. "Boss Lin, we understand." White Rockefeller's voice was trembling. "This information is indeed very important." "So, how do we handle this?" asked Baron Pence. I smiled coldly and clenched the phone in my hand. "This matter is up to you." I glanced at the detailed document from the projection and couldn't help but smile. I had a similar cooperation experience before, especially the joint nomination of President Nadikian with the two major American consortiums. It was an earth-shaking project that almost changed our international status. However, all this glory was destroyed by the Morgan Consortium. The fall of Nadikian made our wealth fall to the bottom overnight, and also made the revenge plan of our two consortiums insignificant in front of the Morgan Consortium. However, the situation in front of me was different. The Morgan Consortium's conspiracy and the records of bacterial virus experiments were exposed. This level of information was a secret that could shake the entire country. Faced with such information, I could almost imagine the shock and fear of the other party when they saw it. White Rockefeller and Baron Pence's expressions gradually changed from surprise to horror. Although a consortium like theirs has extremely powerful economic and political resources, it is powerless to resist this level of explosive information. Especially when they realized the power of this information, their reaction was full of helplessness and fear. Faced with the information in my hands, they could only feel extremely terrified in their hearts, and even a little desperate as if they were kidnapped. I looked at them calmly, but I knew in my heart that this was just the beginning. Although the information in my hands made them deeply fearful, it was also a bargaining chip for me to further control the situation. Watching them express their opinions one by one, and even their attitudes change dramatically, I knew that they had realized the seriousness of the situation. Their confessions and statements did not surprise me. The deep fear and caution they showed at this moment just proved the power of the information I had. I was a little confused by the sudden sincerity of White Rockefeller and Baron Pence, but perhaps this was the effect I expected. I responded to them lightly, nodded, and expressed my satisfaction. Although my expression was calm as usual, I had already started to plan the next step in my heart. I knew that this was only the first step to achieve my goal. Looking at their backs as they quickly left, a sneer appeared at the corner of my mouth. In the days to come, they will have to act under my control, and any betrayal or disobedience will be severely punished. When I woke up, it was time for me to sign in for 24 hours. I raised my hand and called softly, "System, sign in." Congratulations to the host, you have signed in successfully. You have obtained 100% equity of Le Bernardin restaurant. I was stunned. 100% equity? Le Bernardin restaurant? What the hell is this? In Chen Zirua's surprised look, I asked, "Do you know Le Bernardin restaurant?" She paused, her eyes twinkling. "Of course I know, Mr. Lin. Le Bernardin is one of the top Michelin 3-star restaurants in the United States. Since it received the 3-star rating in 2005, it has never dropped. Their seafood dishes are very famous and are divided into 4 parts: raw food, microcooking, light grilling, and hot dishes. I have always wanted to try it before, but I never had the chance." Michelin 3 stars? I was a little skeptical. A tire maker actually knows about food? I couldn't help but smile and joked, "In that case, let's go there for dinner." Chen Zirua shook his head helplessly. "Boss Lin, that restaurant only accepts 10 guests a day, and seats need to be reserved 6 months in advance." I raised my eyebrows and jokingly said, "How do you know if you can get in if you don't try?" Seeing my confident smile, Chen Zirua was a little confused, wondering if I had made an appointment in advance. However, she didn't ask any more questions and just followed me. We drove to Le Bernardin. Chen Zirua hesitated several times on the way, but seeing how confident I was, he stopped bothering me. Maybe I could really get what I wanted. When the car arrived at the restaurant, I got off and walked directly to the restaurant's door. In front of the door, an old man in his 70s or 80s was registering, and a lady in her 60s was standing next to him. Chen Zirua said in surprise, "Boss Lin, those two are Mr. and Mrs. Gates?" I followed her gaze and was startled by the figures of Mr. and Mrs. Gates. Gates was attracted by my voice and quickly came over and shook my hand with respect. "Mr. Lin? I didn't expect to see you here. Are you here for dinner?" I smiled, but a storm was already surging in my heart. Now that I have 100% of the shares of Le Bernardin, how can I make use of the reputation of this top restaurant? Everything today may be just the beginning. A week later, my manor was bustling with people. My parents, Lu Lily's mother, and many relatives gathered together. After heated discussions, Lu Lily and I decided to get married on May 1st. The news spread like wildfire throughout the country within 3 days, and even friends and bigwigs abroad paid attention to it. In Yuanlong Company, Chen Zirua was flustered when she heard the news. "Boss Lin, he's getting married." She sighed, and memories came to her mind. Thousands of words turned into a sigh. Time flies, and the wedding day is here. Half a month before the wedding, I often disappeared, and no one knew what I was busy with. On May 1st, my private island was crowded with people. Lu Lily and I spent the whole morning welcoming guests from all over. The dignitaries of Xinhua sent people to send blessings and gifts, and hundreds of business owners from around the world came in person to congratulate. Many people from domestic research institutes also came, and they did not bring cliched gifts, but small gifts full of sincerity. After all, I am not short of money. The wedding officially began, live broadcast around the world. Countless people watched with bated breath, and the guests were amazed. I toasted at each table and had a great time chatting. Principal Wang suddenly came over and asked, "Brother Lin, where are you going for your honeymoon? How about going to our new resort?" I smiled and said, "No, I already have a plan." Principal Wang was curious, "Tell me about it and give me a reference." I smiled and said, "I haven't been home for half a month because I was preparing for my honeymoon." Everyone's eyes were full of curiosity, and I pointed to the sky. Stars. Sky. Wow. The place was boiling with excitement. Everyone was shocked. "Brother Lin, are you kidding me? The starry sky? It's too difficult for ordinary people to go to space." Only a few official leaders had calm expressions. I smiled and looked at Dean Chen of the Research Institute. Dean Chen sighed and said, "Mr. Lin has already built a spacecraft that can enter the universe and achieve space jumps. The flight speed reaches 100,000 Mach, and the internal ecosystem can last for 1,000 years. Everyone was stunned. I chuckled and said, "Don't worry, everyone. I'm just going to the solar system for a honeymoon and will be back soon." My parents wanted to say something, but they stopped. The others were in endless shock. The wedding ended in shock. At 10 a.m. the next day, in Zhanghai Jinshan district, a huge spacecraft was suspended above the underground laboratory, full of science fiction. This was made with the help of the robotic arm and Dubai, equipped with a complete device system. Everyone was silent, and ordinary people were even more shocked. Lu Lily and I were wearing casual clothes and standing next to the spacecraft. My mother nervously held our hands and said, "Son, be careful." I smiled and said, "Don't worry, Mom. We are just on our honeymoon. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions." With the blessing of everyone, Lu Lily and I stepped into the spacecraft. The hatch closed, and the two of us sat in the cockpit. The spacecraft was ignited under the control of Dubai. Under the gaze of everyone, the spacecraft flew into the universe. After entering space, the spacecraft made a space jump, disappeared from the satellite site, and headed straight for Mars.